G'day folks, AOS Coach here, and I am excited to be talking about the new Dawnbringers 5 book. It is the Crone and the Electric Boogaloo. No, actually, I can't remember the name of the Dawnbringers 5 book, but I do have it, not physically, digitally. You're going to either have to trust me that I've got the rules and they're accurate, or you trust my influencing skills so much that I've made it up and you're going to take my rules and screenshot them to your local GT and realize they are completely wrong. That's up to you to decide how much you trust me. No, I actually do have it, and with proof, I do have the Crone, which is our new Daughters of Khaine hero. We will talk about her as this episode goes along. But I am joined by Dale Johnson, who is a top-performing Daughters of Khaine player. He's been on my radar for a number of years. You have been dedicated at the peaks and the troughs of this faction. I know you did incredibly well at the Las Vegas Open only, 2 months, a month ago. Literally a month ago to this day, as at the time of recording. And I'm excited to see both what we think the Crone. There is a new Armies of Renown that is a part of this as well, a different way to play your Daughters of Khaine. But is it the right way? Is it a new Sons of Behemat King Broad Stomp? Or is the Crone going to be more like a Belthanos or an Ionis, where we take this new hero and slot it into our traditional Daughters of Khaine army builds? But before we get into all these rules, and we got a lot to unpack, Dale, welcome, g'day. Tell the folks who you are and why you love Daughters of Khaine.
Hello, and thank you for having me. So I'm Dale. I am been playing Daughters of Khaine since 2019 when I first got into Age of Sigmar. I used to play Warhammer Fantasy. I played High Elves and some other different factions then. And then when I got back into AOS, I really enjoyed Daughters of Khaine, mainly because it's had, Morathi, Snakes, Witch Elves back in it. I missed it when you had 50-point Hag Queens. I joined just after that kind of period, the Glory Times, I think it was called. And I went to LVO in 2020 and won best overall. Like, that was my first big tournament with them. And then nothing for COVID for a couple of years. And during that time, I kind of jumped on the whole thing of being the anti-Morathi kind of Daughters of Khaine player. I think in the lore, she's fantastic. I love the model. It was just, for me, it's not the kind of play style I wanted to do. I kind of I got a bit of a hipster, but it's like I would rather kind of play my own version of the army than the same thing that I see literally every other list online. So I started doing the kind of the Cauldron of Blood build or the Sword Queen and Cauldron builds, and then evolved into this kind of 4 Avatar and a Cauldron kind of build, which had been running over the last 2 to 3 years with a small break for Gits, and done pretty well. Like I got a number, I think I haven't done less than 3-2 with it, and I think it's got a high number of 4-1s. Still no 5-0 with it yet, but I'll get there.
Maybe the Crone is going to get us to
Maybe.
that 5-0. But I tell you what, I'm going to read out the lore for the Crone, by the way, and we will get to the rules. And folks, if you are thinking about buying either the box where the Crone and her friends come along, you're thinking of bringing Dawnbringers, or you're thinking about buying in general, if you want to support the channel, please, links down below are Warpfire Minis from the USA, Element Games in the UK, or Gap Games in Australia, a new affiliate partner. All goes to help the channel. And as always, Games Workshop did send me this book in advance. They're not going to see this video. We're just going to talk about it, and if we like it, we like it. We don't, we don't. But Games Workshop did send me all this stuff in advance. But interesting point there. You mentioned that you are a bit of an anti-Morathi type person. And I'll read out the little lore snippet on her war scroll for the Crone. A renegade prophet touched by the divine essence of a long-forgotten goddess. Is it Krethusa? The Croneseer rises to prominence, has rocked the cult of Khaine to its core. She calls upon her powers of foresight and shadow magic to annihilate those who stand in the path of the Elven dynasty. So does she foreshadow Malekith coming back? Is there something completely different coming along? Is there going to be a who was the anti-Morathi in fantasy battles? Oh, what's her name?
That was Hellebrand. So actually, I since I started running, there was a fluff piece a long time ago, like maybe 2 books ago, about the Crone Heralds. And since that point, I jumped on the bandwagon as because I don't play Morathi, I run the Crone Heralds. My general at the time was called Hellebrand. We had that. There was a Daughter of Khaine novel.
The three little stories, and
Yeah.
Hellebrand's mentioned.
Hellebrand is mentioned, so it's like, oh, will she come back at some point? That would be pretty cool. And Morai Hegg is like, for those that don't know who she is, she's kind of like the goddess of fate and death, or the crow goddess, the keeper of souls, the all-seeing one. So she's someone who's been kind of like an elven goddess for a long time. So finally seeing her influence on the mortal realms is kind of got me super excited when I saw her drop on the preview.
I love it, and I do love the expansion. And like you, I actually joined Daughters of Khaine probably at the wrong time. Like, if there was any time for me to join Daughters of Khaine, it was when we had bounty hunters. When I'm like, I want to run witch elves because I really like witch elves. I'm like, I'm going to run all the witch elves, and like with literally no armor, it's just like 30 dead.
Yeah.
But then a ray of light from the GW gods came down and gave me the High Gladiatrix, and boy, oh boy, is that when my fate turned. And I really enjoy this line. Like, I legitimately do. And it's one that I'm actually now looking at these rules on going, do I take either the Army of Renown or do I take the Crone and put her in a Daughters of Khaine list and maybe run her for the rest of the season? And I'm very much on the fence here. I'm actually... I am somewhat excited to see the transformation of Daughters of Khaine, because we've had an update on the Battlescroll, we've had some points reductions, we have a new model, we have a new way to play the army, or we have a new tool in the existing force. So there's a lot of options for us Daughters of Khaine players.
I think one of the big things that really helped us between Galician Veterans and the current edition is the Lookout Sir rule change. Because when the Gladiatrix came out, it's like, oh, cool, this is really cool hero. It does this kind of buffing stuff, but she's a 5 wound, 5 up armor save hero. Oh, she's going to die. And now at least you can keep her within the units. It protects her against most things other than magic missiles. And yeah, it's she has a lot more play. Like, before, I don't think I even touched her. And now she's in all my lists.
I included 2 all the time. Like, just, I went for redundancy, because you're right. Yeah. Like, if one got sniped, I'd still have another. But just being able to have 2, and I actually used the is it Lilieth or the Dark Eldar?
Oh yeah, Lilieth.
Yeah, she's my second High Gladiatrix, and I love her. I've got the old metal one, so she's a bit slenderer and she looks very elfy. But look, this is not about me and my Dark Eldar conversions. Talk to me a little bit at context setting, and then we'll get into the rules. I swear we will. I swear. Where does Daughters of Khaine stand right now, and how did you find them performing at the LVO? Because the LVO, obviously, the biggest tournament in Age of Sigmar, over 300 players. You know, we saw, you know, the peaks of cities and Khorne and all these Ossiarch Bone Reapers and Soulblight and all these great armies. How do you feel right now for them competing and playing as an army?
So I find Daughters to be very... They obviously get joked about because they have some very easy battle tactics. And that's one of their powers, because they don't necessarily have that brawling ability right now. Like, yes, we can do damage. Yes, we can do a lot of damage. But, you know, a lot of our stuff is maybe a 4-up save with the buffs. So it's not great. And, like, you know, we don't have that 5-up ward save anymore. It's now like a 6 until like turn 4 or 5. So, you know, we die quite easily. I find versus with the list kind of style I was doing with the Heart of Fury, it really hurts destruction armies. They're all trying to get in and do that high impact damage, and when you're just taking 1 off of all their damage, really, really hurts them. Carson, who's been on your show before, you know, we have this kind of funny triangle where he can't beat me with the Heart of Fury, I can't beat Matthias, but then he beats Matthias every time. So it's this kind of like joke triangle. But so that's what happened to LVO is the day 1, I went against I think it was like a Nurgle ogre in Slake House. I can't remember what it was now. It feels like a lifetime ago. But, you know, got 3-0 day 1. But then day 2, I met my 2 kind of worse matchups, which was Nurgle with Glockin and the 4x10 Plague Bearers, because my army wants to get stuck into you, wants to get in with that damage. And the Nurgle Glockin list with the Bow Piper was just so oppressive for me to deal with. Yeah, I could chew through it, but how much am I going to lose before I chew through it?
You lose the grind. Daughters of Khaine don't want to grind.
Yeah. And then the other one is recently more is Khorne, just because they can have some pretty sneaky movement shenanigans, and just the Bloodthirster that can have the remove ward. And this makes it tough for things like running the avatar build. A lot of the time, you're relying on having all those armor saves add up and a ward save. And when they're running in with something can delete your ward save and then hit you with a block of 30 blood letters with mortal wounds and 6s, it can just be overpowering. So I kind of tweaked my list a bit to deal with those armies, and then they went ahead and nerfed Nurgle and removed the Bowpiper, which was the problem in that list. And now it's like, oh, do I stick with the same thing or do I change back again? So yeah.
It's interesting because, they haven't been performing that well. Like Daughters of Khaine, I guess, from a meta perspective, hasn't been performing. And I guess another challenge is the fact that we just don't have wizards. Like our wizards are not very good. They're not, we don't, we have Doomfire Warlocks. Yes, we can get Arcane Tome. Yes, we can get Medusa and things like that. But it's just, we are a priest-based army that is relying on certain shenanigans, and there are just armies right now who are just doing it better than us. So I'm curious to think if the new rules and the new model bring something to the fold that's going to lift us up and maybe make the most of the rest of this General's Handbook.
Wouldn't it be great if we had a faction train that let us reroll prayers like Khorne? Wouldn't that be lovely? How nice would that be?
Well, like if I think about my old list, what really impacted my old Daughters of Khaine list is going to be the change to rally.
Mm-hmm.
There was that witch elf build, and people play snakes, and snakes do snake things, and they've been pointed to oblivion. Now the witch elf side, or the what's the other build of witch elves?
Sisters of Slaughter.
Sisters of Slaughter. I rarely run them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a witch elf kind of girl. But the impacts to rally as well. The 4-arc rally is great, but I can only do 10 wounds. It's like, you're not so valuable as you used to be. But that's long in the past. What I do have to talk about is, first off, the Battlescroll. So it's probably good context setting. I know, folks, you want to be listening to us talking about Dawnbringers 5, but I think this being hot off the press is probably good context setting as we go into the rules and think about the build. So two parts I want to call out here first. First, we have the update to the Wizard Finders of Antor, a battalion from the core rulebook that is now going to allow us to get not only the extra point of damage, but we also, the extra, +1 attack, but we're also going to get the 5-up Spell Shrug and Endless Spell Shrug. Do you find yourself looking at this battalion more as a Daughters of Khaine player for someone who, to your point, is not very defensive without the Heart of Fury? Is this going to add a little bit of spice to your lists, or are you someone who's more thinking about Warlord, Linebreaker, whatever, like the other battalions?
So I used to run this in my LVO list, I had Wizard Finders, and then since then I had to kind of tweak my points a little, and I dropped my second Medusa and I gave the Gladiatrix the Arcane Tomb. So it meant I was down a hero, because originally my Gladiatrix was in the Wizard Finders, and now I'm kicking myself because I'm trying to think of how to get it back in and tweak it again, because it's a really good ability. Like having the extra attack, like you have 30 Witch Elves going into something, you're on 91 attacks with if you take the 2 daggers. You're now on like 121 attacks. Think about your Nagashes or your things, and it's just weight of dice versus those things. So yeah, having a 5-up Spell Shrug on potentially 2 of your kind of harder hitting units and a hero and a behemoth or monster, because remember you can fit one of those, and a lot of people forget you get one of them in as well. It's really good, and I've just kind of got to think it's just a shame it's limited to non-unique heroes. It just makes it a lot harder to be able to get acolytes and this into a list. And acolytes, unfortunately, it just pips, especially as you said. So Daughters of Khaine, we don't have powerful wizards. So I usually, by having like a Medusa, a Slaughter Queen, and then Arcane Tomb and a Gladiatrix, that's at least 4 dispels, because the Medusa has 2. And having that extra dice to be able to mainly get Mindrazor, because it's the only spell I care about going off, is trying to get Mindrazor off. And the rest of the time I can use it if I'm against someone who's got some scary spells. At least I've potentially got that extra dice going in. And I actually found it's worked pretty well. Like, I recently went to a 1-day RTT, which I managed to get. I won it with this new list I've been running, but it really helped shut down some of the opponent's magics.
Yeah, I was using the Antorian Acolytes Battalion very first came out, and the difference for having one extra power dice is just crazy, right? It's just so powerful to be able to unbind and still think about having an offensive spell, or being able to unbind multiple, which is always a challenge for me as a Daughters player. I look at this and go, I would prefer Warlord or some way to get an extra enhancement, give me an extra artifact, give me a extra prayer. Or do I go into something like Wizard Finders? I think it's much more valuable to us.
Yeah.
If you don't want to play into the prayer game and spell game and you just want to do prayers, this is a cool little upgrade.
Yeah.
But I think,
and especially with Mindraiser, because before this edition, Mindraiser was like recently went 8 to cast, and when you don't really have pluses to cast, getting that off was so. Even Morathi used to get the +1 to cast, and then she lost it. Yeah, so now having the chance of getting the primal dice means you have a pretty solid chance of getting it when you need it to go off.
Yeah, even like if you have arcane terrain, Morathi, arcane terrain, it just brings that to a 50-50. When Morathi we had +1, that made it much more achievable. Yes, I think we all agree the extra primal magic dice is good, but Wizard Fighters of Antor is now more valuable. Maybe not as high as the others, but it's I guess up to you and how you build your list. But you mentioned Arcane Tomb. One of the things that Daughters, as a lot of us know, is that Daughters is a really good prayer-based army. Not necessarily the strongest magic army, but definitely prayer is strong in our game. And there are ways that we can build into not having spells at all. And there's a new battle tactic now called Drain Their Power. I'm not going to read it out. You probably read it by now. But does that change your consideration of bringing a spell or magic wizards into your faction and getting another battle tactic? But as you also mentioned, Daughters is blessed with the amount of good battle tactics we have in our book.
Yeah, I think if we struggled with tactics, it would be probably worth dropping wizards and going more and like doubling up on priests, and maybe taking the warlord to get the extra option. And I'll take this. I just think for us, especially with how prevalent OBR are, Bone Reapers, not having Mindraiser as an option in your list really knocks us back in how much rend we can bring. Because for a lot of people that don't play Daughters, Hoarfrost is not a very good spell for our army. Most people get an effect from it depending on what they roll. But because Daughters of Khaine, most of your stuff's already hitting and wounding on 3s, and by turn 2, 3, 4, you're already hitting on 2s and wounding on 2s. If you roll those on the dice roll, it's just not worth it. And a lot of the stuff again is rend 1, and because it doesn't stack, and as you said with the gladiator tricks as well, they don't stack. So if you don't roll a good number on your rend, then it's pretty much pointless. So you're casting it like I think it's an 8 to cast spell to hopefully roll a high, like a 5 or 6, or to get the high rend. So I think I stick with my magic just for taking acolytes and getting Mindraiser.
I tend to agree, because you look at the Generals Handbook battle tactics and you look at our battle tactics. I am relatively confident that I could score 5 out of 5 unless I misplay or I misread the game. There's enough things like being able to retreat and charge, being able to have enough models. You can have Canary coming from the sky for surround and destroy. There are so many options in the General's Handbook, in addition to the 2 to 3 you can possibly do, depending on how you build your list. And hell, you might even build like a Hagg Nar build with lots of witch elves, go into chaos, and you've got another one you've unlocked as well.
That's always a funny one to have.
I've never scored it. I will want to. There's one day I will score that one. But there's just you're blessed with options, so it's nice to have. If your list happens to not have any wizards, I think we both agree this is great. If you have a decision of taking a Nullstone versus an Arcane Tomb, or a wizard. Sorry, I'm just taking the mickey out of you. I'm not going to stop that now. But I think you take the wizard every day of the week.
I think they basically just shoehorned it in to try and appease the Blades of Khorne players, who they just kind of made wizards harder, like less worthwhile for their armies, because you can still have them, but the fact that their spells are now affected, which means getting because it counts as being a dispel. It's not their ruling. Doing turn 1. Magical dominance is not a good option anymore.
No, it's pretty challenging, and
Yeah.
Fedra and friends. But it's good for KO. It's good for Fire Slayers. It's good for, but maybe not necessarily us, because we do have some native wizards. It's really nice to see, by the way, the latest update was a clarification on Turn to Crystal. So for those snake friends,
which is really good.
Yeah, we needed the clarification. The rule didn't change. It's just basically, does it happen before or after, which ultimately determines how many mortal wounds you'd be able to do. Great clarification. It's now before. Move that to the side. Do any of these points adjustments make a unit more appealing? So Morathi dropping 20 points back to under 700. The shrines, the various shrines have all gone down, 10 or 20 points. And then the Underworld's Warband, the Shade Stalker, and the Shadeborn going down a little bit, 10 points. I haven't actually used that unit just yet, so I don't have a lot to say. But
so the interesting ones on this, so the Bloodwrack Shrine is kind of a cool one, because basically you're paying 140 points for a foot Medusa. So for an extra 20 points, you're getting an additional, 4, 5, 6, 7 wounds. I think a better armor save. You're getting more attacks from the machine. Plus it does that mortal wound attack and impact hits. It's also not a behemoth, unlike the Cauldron of Blood, which is a behemoth. So you could have multiple Bloodwrack Shrines in. The only shame of it is the fact of it doesn't count towards your locus. So if you're wanting acolytes, you can't really put them in unless you've got the spare points. Also, the mortal wound ability to have, which is kind of like a 7-inch bubble, depending on how much damage is on it, does D3 mortal wounds to things. It doesn't affect multiple units. So again, it's like having one in, if you have the spare points just for some extra mortal wound damage, is pretty cool. You're still getting 2 dispels from it. You're still getting the Bloodwrack Medusa's stare ability, which is great versus hordes. But I just don't think it really sees much more play over a normal Medusa, because people want the acolytes. The interesting one was the Shadeborn. So about 6 months ago, I switched from Heartrenders over to the Shadeborn that used to be 210 points. And the main reason I did that was I was finding Heartrenders, even though you get an easy tactic with them, they die so easily. They're a 5-up armor save model. They're a 40 mil base with 1 wound. They don't even get the bucklers anymore, which used to do the mortal wound back on a 6. And they just die to anything. And I was finding they'd come back, maybe get their tactic. If the opponent doesn't have shooting or doesn't go after them, you might be able to get the 2 units in your enemy's deployment zone, or help for surroundings to destroy. But I just find they just don't really do work. The Shadeborn, on the other hand, though, is the same points now. They're a teleporting unit that can retreat and teleport as well, which is cool. They have a 4-up armor save. If they're out of 9 inches from an enemy unit and they're near the hero, they have a 4-up ward save as well. But they just have a lot more wounds. They're higher bravery. I think the unit's 8, she's 9. The unit has a lot of attacks, and there's no rend on them, but it's 4 attacks, freeze, no rend, 1 damage. But that's like 3 models throwing out 12 attacks. You put those into like some, Blood Reavers or a smaller unit, you're hurting it badly. And with the 4-up armor save, again, being in some cover, putting Sync on them, all that defensing is pretty, they can be quite tanky if they need to. Seafiel as well. Her shooting attacks, nothing to write home about. It's only 3 shots. It's not great. But in combat, she could be quite funny. Again, for those that haven't seen her rules, 3 attacks, freeze, rend 1, 3 damage. There's a heroic action with Daughters of Khaine where you can give a non-mounted hero, or it could be a mounted hero, but not the mount, plus 2 attacks as well. So she can end up with 5 attacks with that freeze, rend 1, 3 damage. Again, with the Daughters of Khaine Blood Rights, that's very quickly 2s. So yeah, you could even chuck a cheeky Mind Razor on her and she could go in with rend 2, 4 damage and just do some hilarious work.
This is the hero. This is the hero you want in Wizard Finders. Like, I can see now why, because that's one of the challenges, right? When I look at Wizard Finders Battalion, most factions don't have that assassin-y type hero that goes in and slaps. You might have like a White King and like in Soul Black Grave Lords, and there's some armies obviously are an exception. But Daughters of Khaine, like most of those heroes are, Hag Queens or Slaughter Queens, or just things where like, you'll go in and probably die. This is an exception. Obviously, being unique stops us from doing that. But I think you make a really valid point, right? Like when I reflect on when I use Khaine, they're great. They come from the sky, score me the easy battle tactic. If I get the double or if they survive, they could then move backwards to do surround and destroy. I can't do them while they're in reserve. They must be on the table. So then it's a turn afterwards. But these ones setting up on the field, and then they could act as a screen. They could be selected to go do things and jump through the shadows. They've got some good attack profiles.
How I deploy them is usually back with my Medusa. And then I've got two options for turn one. I can either do Magical Dom if they make me go first because I'm backboarded, or I can do Surround and Destroy. Because again, I already have my Medusa at the back and they can teleport off and do their own thing. They can also do the one for the Daughters of Khaine, having 2 units in your opponent's deployment zone. They also have, like, you don't use it often, but there is a get out of jail card, which is there's a Shadow Stalker, because a Shadow Stalker keyword. Where if you make a teleport and a charge for a Shadow Stalker unit, you get the tactic. So because you've got 2 units there, with the fact that Daughters of Khaine get +1 to charge from turn 2, turn 1 if you Hagg Nar, and say using a CP for a reroll, you have 3 attempts of rolling an 8. If you like, I am out of tactics, this is the only one I can do. It's not the worst. It's not like trying to do a Magical Dome when you're against Croak and you have no primal dice or something. So yeah, I just find them really interesting, and they can definitely. I think for a joke, we put one into the free Shadeborn into a Iron Blaster, and they killed it with their shooting and then their combat ability. So yeah, good fun unit. It's a very good alternative to using Khaine if you want something a bit different. Other the Daughters of Khaine player, don't take it because I don't want the points to go up. So don't take them; they're terrible. But no,
you know
really
what?
cool. Yeah.
You know what? I've got a box. I'm pretty sure I've got a box right above me. I'm like, you might have convinced me to go build them. I haven't looked at them. But
it's a really small surface area as well, because you only got it's 4 models, 2 units. She's I think 40, and I think they're like 28.5 or something. But again, in terms of getting into those little spots where the opponent might have tried to zone you out, where you're only putting like 1 model down or 3 little models down, yeah, they're pretty good. She also has, and I keep forgetting this every game, a silly little rule where
is that the 2d6 rule?
Yeah, so at the start of the combat phase, you make your opponent take a bravery test, and if they fail, they can't accept commands or
it can't issue or receive. That's not bad.
Yeah. So against most armies, it's like OBR, you don't really care, but like you go into those again, those Blood Reavers that might try and damage you first, and they're suddenly not able to all that attack or something. Pretty useful.
What makes that? It makes that, for example, the when you're in combat and you've got a Rend 1 attack, all that defense then neutralizes that. That all of a sudden is a big game changer, especially if you're able to get additional rend on the attack. So you make a good argument, and I think if people haven't gone out and bought it, they've probably, at the same time looking at their FLGS. Shout out to mine, but anyway, I legitimately am thinking about this now as a viable, because I always run Khaine automatically because I'm a simple kind of guy. Before we get into Dawnbringer rules, I do want to just quickly talk about our mother, or my waifu, Morathi Khaine herself. Mummy Morathi, God bless her. She's the reason I came to the faction. I love Morathi. What a great backstory. She's gone from 600s to 700, and now she's back to the 600s. Where do we stand on Morathi now? I know that you're an anti-Morathi person. But let's give credit where credit's due. She's a centerpiece model. She's very killy. She does the great things with snakes, be able to fight in the hero phase or shoot in the hero phase. She's got a lot of great tools and tactics available to her. But how do you feel about her price point now at the 680 mark?
I think, so the thing with Morathi is, like, I don't think she would be as expensive, and I don't think bow snakes would be as expensive if it wasn't for the command ability. Because most of the people, unless you're taking Morathi, you don't take bow snakes because they just aren't worth the points. And that's the kind of, like, I think the oppressive thing with the army is if they just tweak that command ability from maybe just make it combat or something, it would completely change a lot of Daughter of Khaine's lists. At 680, I think she's still fine. I think she's a very solid piece still. I think she misses the +1 to cast she used to have. I think she's someone that if I was going to run her now, I think I would go with something similar that Mick from Island ran, LVO, which is put her in Kelt Nar. because then she's getting retreat and charge. She's not being tar pitted by something. Retreat and charge great for abusing like Mind Razor, because you can stick Mind Razor on her, and then she's getting in with like Rend Free and a lot of her attacks for damage, so she can really do work against those heavy armies. I think the issue with Morathi is always the thing of good players will know how to deal with her. And she'll be dead by bottom of turn 2, maybe turn 3. And if you're not prepared for that, then you lose the game.
Yeah. She's a centerpiece model that attracts a lot of attention. A lot of the time I found it's based on my success of piloting her. If I can avoid her from taking that 1 point of damage, and maybe it's 2 and not the 3, just keeping her around until turn 4 is critical. So if you're going to trade, you need to trade up. But I will say as well, though, she also is a great distraction piece. So while Morathi's on the table, they're not touching your snakes. They're not touching your witch elves. And if you can play to that as your advantage, then I guess that also works. I like her at this point.
Retreat and charge as well, being able to get her in and behind the enemy army when they think she's trapped in, because she can do work.
Oh yeah, like if she's in combat. In fact, I want her to be in combat in the hero phase, so I can get an extra, set of fighting and then go out and do my little thing. But you've got to be tagging units. You've got to be really protective of how much goes into her. Yeah. 680 is the right number. Or at least I'd love her down a little more. But to your point, she has rules tied into her, like the bow snake shooting in the hero phase, which I personally wish were not there. Like, make it melee only and bring her down or improve her rules a little bit and make her super killy.
I think she would be great if, and this is again wish listing kind of thing, if she didn't have that wound rule, if she was like an 18 wound monster where again you can shoot one and the wounds go through to the other one, so but then at least that way you could heal her or do some prayers on her, do heroic healing. I just think it's the rule set is great for mid to low level to play, but in the upper level play you really need to play her properly or you're not getting that worth.
And there's feel bads for the inexperienced people who don't know how to handle it. And so it's a rule that I wouldn't be surprised in future updates we see a rule modification. Are we ready to talk about the new model?
Yes.
We have our new Crow lady herself. And first off, I absolutely love painting her. She is right now locked into a box. So the box comes with witch elves slash
Sisters of Slaughter?
Yeah, Sisters of Slaughter.
Yeah.
I never run them. That's why I forgot. Like witch elves. So it comes with them. It comes with some Doomfire Warlocks as well. So it's an interesting box. Depends on, I guess, what your collection is. You might wait for this model to be released independently. So what do we get for our Croneseeker? So we are movement 14, save 5, bravery 9, 6 wounds. Okay, so far we're looking at a glorified hag queen who can fly. Okay, so far so good. We have the staff of Morathi. How do you pronounce it?
Morai Hag.
Morai Hag.
Yeah.
And we also have the clawed arms. So she's got an interesting attack profile. We've got a little bit of Rand, 3s and 4s. Obviously, the Blood Rights table will bring that down a little bit. Damage 1, damage 2. Okay, so not really combat-y. It's okay. She can slap, but she is not going to be a mini Morathi just yet. We have Fly. No surprise, she has wings. Where the things that become really interesting is the War Scroll rules. So first off, you have the Burnt Offerings. Once per turn in your hero phase, if this unit is wholly within 6 inches of a friendly cauldron of blood, you can say that it will commune to Morai Hag. Insert Morai Hag. I say insert Dale every time I go to say that.
I'll go say it.
Morai Hag. If you do so, pick one friendly Daughters of Khaine unit wholly within 9 inches of this unit that does not have the Scathborn, Medusai. I wish they'd be the same keyword, by the way.
Yeah.
The Shadow Queen or Morathi Khaine keyword. Pause for a second. Dale, who is our Scathborn for people who are unfamiliar?
The Scathborn is one of the kind of the subfactions of Daughters of Khaine, but they're basically, I can't remember which ones they were, because they're just all snakes.
Basically, that's the mindset. Anything that is snaky, Morathi is snaky, snakes are snakes, heroes that are snakes are snakes. No snakes.
But they used to be the same word as you said, but the Medusae and the Methuselah are now separated in the newer version of the book, which is a pain.
I hate it so much. Anyway, so basically pick a unit that is not a snake and roll a dice. On a 2+, you can pick one of the following prophecies to apply to that unit. A unit cannot be affected by the same prophecy more than once per turn. Good to know as well, because this is a unique hero, so we can only take one, not really a concern of us. So, what can I choose? I can choose a Prophecy of Silence, which is until the end of the turn, enemy units within 3 inches of this unit cannot receive commands.
Pretty cool.
That's very cool. Actually, let's talk about it as we go. So, good.
Yeah. That, I mean, if you think about what we were saying before, being able to, some of the more prevalent armies right now, OBR is a big one. So being able to stop that, being able to buff their armor saves, things like this, all out defenses, all out attack for taking damage back, really good. Does this, I'm not sure in terms of order of play, would this stop Unleash Hell as well? Is it when the connecting combat they get shot, or is it when they're coming in? I can't remember.
Because you're already being 3, so you'll stop Unleash Hell because you're already within 3 inches, so they can't.
So again, for an army where your paper thin armor saves, being able to have 30 Witch Elves charge into 20 of those Fusiliers and shut down Unleash Hell, brilliant.
Yeah, but that won't work because you're already in combat, so they can't. Yeah, but anyway, I see where you're going with this. Prophecy of the Dark Wings. So this unit can immediately make a normal move. If it hasn't already made a normal move, retreated, or been set up in the battlefield in the same phase. So this is important because the War Scroll is purely about in the hero phase, but in the Armies of Renown, it allows you to access the burnt offerings in other phases. So you could do something out of sequence, which is really neat, but it does impact you if you've already moved, if you have retreated, or if you've been set up. So you can't come in from ambush and then make a normal move.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
This is kind of a fun thing where I was looking at ideas of what I could do as a turn 1 kind of alpha strike, because a lot of the time my lists have been 13 drops or something. Your opponent usually makes me go first because they want to go for that double, and being able to move an avatar 9 inches forward and then 9-inch move afterwards and then he gets his charge, or even Witch Elves or Sister of Slaughter because they can run and charge, being able to get that on an 18-inch deployment, being able to have that free 6-inch movement and then be able to auto run them 12, that's pretty cool. That means you can get around the back of something, you can get in the side of something turn 1, and then really make the, depending on your charge roll, get right into the heart of some of the things you want to tag and hold up or do some damage to.
My favorite part of this as well is it can stop your redeploy. So get that hero phase move, get just on 3 inches, and because it's a hero phase move and not a movement phase move, they wouldn't be able to redeploy. So then your charge could be a 3 or a 4, something really basic, and as opposed to the redeploy, which could push it back to 9.
Mm-hmm. This is also, is this at this version as well? This is the hero phase.
It's just in the hero phase. So
I was hoping if it was the start, you could move and then use a Slaughter Queen's Orgy of Slaughter, but because it's in the hero phase, you wouldn't be able to do that.
No.
Yeah, so it's still cool.
No, but you could if you were in combat. Yeah, you could fight in the combat. You could fight in the hero phase, and then you could issue this to then move after, assuming you've killed the unit you've fought. You could then move after you've killed.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, it gives us something like Khorne have. It gives us a little bit of movement shenanigans, which we didn't have.
And then we have the Prophecy of the Reclamation. So until the end of the turn, while this unit is contesting an objective, enemy units can only contest that objective if they have the hero or monster keyword.
It's a lot of fun. It's like, look, you've got those 30 Mortek Garden at point. I'm going to have this one Witch Elf put a toe over here, and I'm going to get the point for this turn. Yeah.
I think this also combines nicely maybe with the Wizard Finders of Antor, because now you have a lot of heroes who are often wizards who, okay, you want to claim this objective, you've got to bring that to the party. And now you're in threat range to be getting the extra attacks from the Wizard Finders. So we don't see a lot of heroes on the table. And when they do, they're probably more of the sub-commander type, support wizards as heroes at the moment, not necessarily the big bads. It's not a bad little ability.
Yeah. All
right. Obviously situational, so we pick them when we want to pick them. Dale, anything else you'd add to the burnt offerings?
No, just it's 2 up, pretty safe. And it's interesting. The only thing is you're just going to making sure you keep her within that whole within 6, because she's a bigger base model. You're going to have to make sure she stays nice and tight to the cauldron, which you probably want to do to protect her anyway, because of that 5 up armor save, 4 up ward,
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, right? Is that she's going to have to be wholly within 6 inches of a cauldron of blood. So you could use the prophecy of the Dark Wings on her, and then use that free 14-inch move to be really aggressive. But then come turn 2, you're going to be out of the cauldron range, and you're not going to be able to use burnt offerings. So it's almost like you're making a little castle of support while the rest of your things go out.
But that's what we do a lot of the time anyway for Daughters, especially if you're running like the Heart of Fury. A lot of your stuff's in like 12-inch bubbles.
Yeah, we're no stranger to those.
Yeah.
There is a foresight where the unit gets a ward of 4+. So yes, she's only 6 wounds, but we have a 4-up ward. Good.
I think if she didn't have that, I think if she only had the Fanatical Faith, she would not be taken.
Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed.
Just far too easy to get magical, just dead.
Yeah, I wholly agree. Now, the interesting thing that probably will get errated because it doesn't necessarily say that she is a priest. Yes, it has the priest keyword, but it doesn't necessarily say how many prayers she has. So it looks like, and only assume that she's a 1 chanter. So she does have a prayer called Murder of Crows, has an answer value of 4 and a range of 18. If answered, pick 1 enemy unit within range and visible to the chanter. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Then roll a dice. If the roll is equal to or higher than the wounds characteristic of that enemy unit, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit for the rest of the battle.
It's pretty useful. Like being able to do, Daughters of Khaine don't have any sources of -1 to hit really anymore. We used to have it with Calibron for shooting, but then they took that out. So having something where you can hit that, flirty block of something that's coming for you in combat, Ogre's instance, or Gits, where they're already like Boingrots, they're already hitting you normally on 4+. So being able to hit them before they get in combat, and then now going to be hitting you on 5s, is pretty good. And it's you've only got to roll over their wound values. So most of the stuff that's probably more aggressive for us is only going to be on a 2 or a 3+ anyway.
I think the interesting thing here as well is the combinations that aren't as obvious. So first off, the Murder of Crows being a prayer, your Croneseer is probably going to be within range of the Cauldron of Blood, who has the avatar. So you're going to get +1. So even though it says 4, realistically, it's a 3. The other one that I see is the Murder of Crows in combination to say the Prophecy of Silence, where you're -1 to hit, and you've shut down them receiving commands, so they can't even use all-out attack to get them back up to neutral.
Now the question I had is, does this stack? So if I do this turn 1 and turn 2, is that going to be a -2 for the rest of the game and basically negate all-out attack?
If I'm GW predicting the errata, they'll probably clarify to say it can only be affected once.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean,
but as it stands, yes, you probably can stack it. But I imagine the intention will be, we are recording, by the way, before any erratas, so things that we are saying might get clarified. But that'd be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a useful, like being able to put -1 on something in an army where we haven't had that before on a 3-up. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I actually don't even mind spreading it out, because then all of a sudden you're forcing them to spend all out attack in certain places, and then Prophecy of Silence really comes into the mix. And
especially if you hit multiple units with that, like one big unit and you're hitting like 3 or 4 units. That's great.
They can't all out attack to get out of Murder of Crows, and they can't all out defend to like, it's just like a really bad situation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time when I've thrown 30 fully buff witch elves into stuff, just thinking about being able to shut off commands on all those things I'm tagging is cool. it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. You rely on the High Gladiatrix, but actually this either means you don't have to rely as much, or you increase the value of that combination even more. My question to you, Dale, is 170 points. It is a hero and it is unique. It will take up a leader slot. Do we like this? Are you going to run it?
I like it.
Where do the points come from?
I like it, and I think I am going to run it. I will probably, so in the list that we'll be seeing later on, I've just recently dropped down a Medusa anyway, and then with the general reductions from the Cauldron, the Shadeborn, and things like that, it gives me that extra 30 points, enough to cover her. I just think just having that ability to steal an objective if they've not got a monster, it's the flexibility. All three of those abilities are useful at some point. Whether you're fighting Suns and the last one's not useful, but the other two are, or you're fighting a Horde, like all of those are very cool abilities to have access to.
Shutting down Suns all out defense or all out attack, I hate it. I hate it so much. So if you turn a Mega Gargant essentially like not being able to all out defense, you clear those wounds very, very quickly. Yeah. Or the Gatebreaker's Flail just doesn't do nearly as much when you're hitting on. Actually, if you're hitting on 5s, if you hit the Murder of Crows on the flail, that makes me cry inside. So,
well, I don't know if we can get the -1 on him because you've got to roll equal or higher than the wounds characteristics. So it's not going to work on Suns. But
I was thinking bravery. I was thinking bravery. Yeah. Most 2d6 rolls are bravery, so I immediately went to bravery. No, you can't do it. Yes,
yeah,
good call.
But it's great. I said like that ability is great versus like Boingrots or things like Squigs when they're not able to get the +1 anyway. So.
Love it. So I think we both agree Croneseer is definitely worth considering. Is she auto-include?
I don't know if she's auto-include, especially if you're running that Morathi snakelets, because this is the big thing with this model is she's not this big super level character as people might have thought she'd be. She's not like an opposing point value to Morathi. She's only 170 points. But if you put her in an army with Morathi and 15 bow snakes, which a lot of armies run, she ain't doing anything to benefit you. She might benefit that unit of witch elves you have to fill in your battle line, or that unit of Canary or something. But in general, you're not going to see her in a lot of those lists.
Is she the same price as Bloodstalkers? Oh, just under. She's just 10 points.
Yeah.
So I guess the question there is like, if you put her in Morathi and the Bow Snakes, she is essentially going that unit of 10 to 15. Or 15 is like, okay, well, where does that 170 points come from?
But none of her abilities work on those snakes anyway. So you're basically taking her for a one-cast priest with a 4-up ward.
Do you need to take a cauldron with her? Like, if you take this model, do you have to have a cauldron?
Yeah, because I don't think her ability works without a cauldron.
The burnt offering requires a cauldron, but I guess what I'm saying is like, if you didn't have the cauldron,
because you're basically taking her for one more wound than a normal hero, fly, and a 4-up ward and a prayer, which is okay, but without that cauldron or an avatar, you're doing it on a 4 anyway, and you could get for 110 points, Slaughter Queen or Hag Queen, and a Slaughter Queen works well with the snakes. Because then you can use the Orgy of Slaughter and Morathi's ability for the extra attacks.
All right. We like her. Good model. Yeah. I agree with you, by the way. I initially going into this was hoping for a 300 to 400 point Ionis, Belthanos, something a bit more killy, or a bit more like basically an alternative to Morathi. It's not what we got. Doesn't mean that's a bad thing. And the points definitely are generous for this model. I love the techie pieces and the people who appreciate the shenanigans, the techie, counting your opponent is going to love this. If you just want to run forward and just murder with, double blades, maybe not the model for you, but it brings a lot to the table.
Yep.
All right. Anything else before we get into her Army of Renown?
No. I just can't wait get my hands on the model. She's cool.
She's a very cool model.
Very, very envious of your. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed painting her. This model is match play, obviously, and it can be used in a normal Daughters of Khaine army, so it's not restricted to the Croneseers Pariahs. So this is a new Armies of Renown. So if you want to ditch your entire allegiance ability, so get rid of the Blood Rights table, get rid of Mind Razor, get rid of your artifacts, and get rid of like the the orators and all the things that like you're
battle tactics, prayers.
If you want to take that book and throw it in the bin, you now get to enjoy the Croneseers Pariahs. So that's an Army of Renown, and what you're about to see on the 2 slides is going to show you your new toolkit. So, guided by Dale, what's the word?
Morai Hagg.
Morai Hagg. All right. I just want to hear your voice. So basically, with the Croneseers Pariahs, you will notice that it is keyword restricted and no snakes. So you can have anything in Daughters of Khaine, just no snakes, no Skaithborn, no Medusae, no Medusai, no Shadow Queen, no Morathi. Everything else, and you do gain the Croneseers Pariah keyword. So first rule, guided by Morai Hagg, is if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by a friendly Croneseers Pariah is a 6, that attack automatically wounds the target. Do not make a wound roll. And the rend characteristic of that attack is improved by 1.
It's fun if you're rolling a lot of dice at something, but yeah, it's most of your stuff's going to be rend 1, maybe rend 2 if you're in Gladiatrix range, but still damage 1.
There's still damage 1, but you do get rend. You get rend. Well, obviously on hits of 6, they'll turn into an extra point of rend. So
it'd be fun on things like avatars if you're automatically wounding and you're getting the extra rend on their rend 2.
So it turns witch elves from rend nothing into rend 1. It turns your avatars from rend
2 to rend 3.
Rend 2 to rend 3. Your Doomfire warlocks would go from rend
1 to rend 2.
1 to 2, and then obviously we know that we can shut off commands as well. So there's a nice little.
And the auto wound is quite nice. So it saves you roll. I mean, a lot of time we're getting those. Well, we would normally be getting those pluses to wound, but we're not getting them anymore because it's out of the book.
Is it the avatars and the witch elves and sisters of slaughter that are our most beneficial of this particular rule?
Yeah, I think so. I think it can help the Doomfire Warlocks, but they need a lot of help.
The problem with the Doomfires is they don't have the volume, which is why I'm mentioning it. And you might go, Anthony, neither does the Avatar, but they have high value from the hits. So they do damage 3 as opposed to damage who cares from the Doomfires. Laden with prophecy, a friendly Croneseers Pariah cauldron of blood can be empty or full. Now, this is a very different way of playing the cauldron, and it took me a few takes to really understand this. Well, maybe it didn't. Maybe I'm exaggerating there. But you start the battle with an empty cauldron. All right, so this is a mechanic we've never had to worry about. We will now. So the cauldron is empty. We have to go fill the cauldron. And how do we go fill it? We go and kill something within 3 inches of that cauldron of blood. We go kill an enemy model. So we can't use the shooting attack. We've got to be within 3 inches. And once that's done, the cauldron becomes full. What happens when the cauldron is full? The cauldron of blood gets a ward of 4+ against shooting attacks. As well as that, you subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target a friendly Croneseer Pariah unit while it's wholly within range of a friendly cauldron of blood that is full with its blood shield ability. So
which is usually an 18-inch range.
Correct, 18 inches, normally +1 to save. It's now +1 to save and -1 to be hit. What do we think of that rule? Because the cauldron full and empty thing is a whole different little micromanagement piece we've never had to worry about.
It's the ability is cool. The fact that if you don't start the game with it full, unless something else we'll come up to is an effect, is a bit of a shame because a lot of the time it's turn 1 and 2 you're going to be getting shot anyway, so that resistance isn't going to do you as much good as you need it.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that my cauldron is probably going to be in combat by turn 2 or turn 3. Depending on how the battle's going. So it means that I'm not getting the ward save. It means that I'm not tapping into the, I don't know, like I don't like it. I don't like this particular rule.
Yeah, and if you think about KO, for instance, you know, they're going to be on you turn one shooting your cauldrons. So unless you got a way of getting that forward ward turn one, you're in trouble.
I mean, you do get the Bloodright Shield. You obviously have the 6-up from
Yeah.
the Fanatical Faith, but yeah, it's an interesting one. Let's keep exploring this and see maybe we make up for the rules. Once per turn with skilled skirmishers, after an enemy unit finishes a charge move within 3 inches of a friendly Croneseer Pariah Doomfire Warlock unit, roll a dice. On a 3+, that unit can immediately retreat 2d6. Only one friendly Doomfire Warlock unit can attempt this ability each turn.
I think it's kind of a fun ability. It gives Doomfire something that they kind of needed. A lot of people like you don't see Doomfire Warlocks usually because the magic range and the shooting range is 12 inches. So, and as you said, they don't have the volume of attacks. So being able to have a unit or two of these on the flank, being able to have them as that, or even the front of your army, as a screen that could potentially go back to 2d6. But again, it's on a 3-up, so there is a chance it fails, and they're now going to be into that screen, killing them quickly and hitting the rest of your stuff if they get the turn.
When you add the accepted outcast rule where it makes Doomfire Warlock's battle line, when you think about skilled skirmishers with the outcasts, you know, a unit that is 10 wounds, a wizard for 120 points, and fulfilling battle line, that actually does make me think about using Doomfires. It's a unit that I've always considered, but I always drop because I never have the points. If I'm building a Croneseers Pariah, I'm definitely now taking at least one unit of Doomfires.
Yeah, and especially since you don't have any other wizards, you can't ally in any wizards, you can't take the Medusa. This is your only source of wizards apart from an Arcane Tomb.
Yeah, without Arcane Tome, correct.
Yeah.
Speaking of Fanatical Faith, there is still the 6-up ward, so we're not going to ignore that. Though there is no Blood Rights table, so no +1 to run, charge, hit, or wound. So you do have Fanatical Faith, no Blood Rights table. The other rule you get, actually 2 other rules, is you have the Bloody Haruspices. Oh, God. Why do you do this to me, Games Workshop?
Haruspices, yeah, it's a weird one.
It's a weird one. Yeah, let's just call it let's call it the bloody Old Spice.
Yeah, bloody Old Spice.
Yeah, we're riding Doomfire Warlock horses through a beach. At the start of any phase, you can pick one friendly full Croneseer Pariah Cauldron of Blood within 6 inches of a friendly Croneseer Croneseer. If you do so, that Cauldron of Blood becomes empty, and the Croneseer can immediately use a Burn Offering ability. If it's in the hero phase, the Croneseer can use the Burn Offerings ability twice. So I mentioned earlier that there is a way to use the Burn Offering rule out of sequence. Burn Offering, by the way, is what we talked about, which is the 3 options on a 2-up. So we can now use it. We can do something in the movement phase, in the combat phase, the shooting phase. Yeah. We have what does that mean for us? Like, what are you thinking here?
Well, I mean, it gives you that ability if you wanted to kind of do a fun alpha strike where you can move that unit 6 inches and also give them that ignore command abilities. Or, you know, you could do 2 different units with the movement. You can do 2 different units with, because they said you just can't do it the same unit with the same ability on her rules. So you can put different abilities on a unit. So you can have 2 units. You can use the same ability twice. They just have to be on separate units.
Yes.
Or you can stack 1 unit with multiple. So it just gives you that flexibility of, you know, if you need to steal 2 objectives, you can put it on 2 units, go and touch those points and steal it for your 1-2, potentially more at that turn. If you need to get, even maybe if you're wanting to try and retreat back a bit, if you're not wanting to try and get in and around stuff, having that extra additional movement in the movement phase, the hero phase, the shooting phase, just gives you a bit of play. Like, imagine using it at the start, your opponent it's the start of any phase. So your opponent has dropped his Ironclad down 12 inches away to get its maximum shooting from your unit. You could then, because it's the start of the phase. Oh, yeah, because start the shooting phase. So at the start of the shooting phase, you then use it on that unit to pull it 6 inches back, and then half the shooting is no longer going to be viable against that unit.
Yeah, because the The burnt offering is once per turn in the
Mhm.
hero phase.
Mhm.
The hero phase, not my hero phase. It's the hero phase. So
Yeah.
yours or mine. So
Mhm.
using that example, KO, use fly high, or they make their move. They come in front of me. They're in range for all their guns. In a normal Daughters of Khaine, I can only do it in the hero phase. So that stops, for example, that. Although, like if Khorne uses something from their blood, their murder table, and move within 3, I've got some shenanigans. But now they've done their thing, and I can make that free move. Now getting out of range of some, maybe all of guns, maybe not all of them, but there is some shenanigans in play.
Even doing it at the start of the charge phase, being able to pull a unit, up to 6 inches back for a normal movement of one of the witch elves or something. Your opponent's kind of set up like, oh, I've now got a 3-inch charge or a 6-inch charge. You're suddenly bringing that 6 inches back.
It's a glorified redeploy. Like normally when we roll the redeploy, we're like, oh, please roll hot, please roll hot. Actually, you've guaranteed you got the 6 or the 5, depending on the movement. So, okay.
And is this? I'm just rereading this again. Can you use it in every phase? Oh no, you have to empty the pot to do it. That was the key to it. Yeah, so
that's the key.
Yeah, so it's something you can keep as a clutch. Like you've made a mistake, you need to move Sank on. You need to move Sank over and steal a point. They're about to charge you, but you want to reduce how much they're going to be able to do with commands. Having that in your back pocket as something you can do at the start of any phase is pretty good.
Yeah, if I'm playing this Army of Renown, I think I'm playing it defensively, to your point, where I'm using maybe in your phase to stop you from or making your thing harder. Okay. And the last rule we haven't spoken about is the blood reveals all. So at the start of the hero phase, you can carry out this heroic action with a friendly Croneseer pariah hero instead of any other heroic action you can carry out with that hero. By the way, we have given up our Daughters of Khaine heroic action as well. So the sexy one that Dale was talking about earlier isn't available in this. So the blood reveals all. Pick one friendly Croneseer pariah hero within 9 inches of a friendly empty Croneseer pariah cauldron of blood. Then pick one other unit within 3 inches of that hero. That unit suffers D6 mortal wounds that cannot be negated. Then roll a dice. On a 4+, the cauldron of blood becomes full.
So this
reminds me of something. This reminds me of something, Dale. What does it remind you of?
Which one are you thinking?
I'm thinking of the Cities of Sigmar Sorceress Stabby.
Oh yeah, the Stabby.
I'm like, this is the self stabby to yep.
This one's very interesting because literally, if you do it on any other Daughters of Khaine hero apart from a cauldron that you have access to, is gonna die on a 5 or a 6.
Yeah.
So you need a second cauldron if you're gonna probably rely on this ability. Now, the benefit of it is if you can get that 4-up, you can have that bubble against shooting, that cauldron on a 4-up against shooting turn 1, which could be useful. It also gives you that having that blood ability in your back pocket if you need it to.
Can I tell you what I hate? I hate that it's a 4-up.
Yeah.
If I lose a hero that's costing me up to 150 points, and then I roll a 3 or less, I hate that.
Yeah.
I feel like for that type of sacrifice, or maybe
if it was D3 for a 4+, D6 if it was a 3-up.
Correct.
Maybe we even give you the option, like have the thing of where it's like, oh, if you take 1 wound, it's a 5-up. If you take, a 4-up,
if it kills the hero, if it kills the hero, you do not have to make the roll. Like I just don't like the idea of losing a 150-point hero, and then 50-50 chance of it being full when I could have just killed one idiot in combat and it's full.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you just take like 4 free because you're already taking 2 cauldrons and the crone. You can take 3 gladiatrixes. At least they're 90 points. They're a bit cheaper. But yeah, it's like it's a free. You automatically get it for killing something in combat within 3 inches. So the fact of it's a 4-up is a bit hard to swallow. For D6, that can't be negated.
And it's costing you your heroic action.
and it's costing you heroic action. So
Like-
no CP, no willpower, no
No finest hour. Like, it just
yeah.
to me, as cool as that is, it's a big trade. Like, it's a big trade-off. So it must be, I don't know. Nah, there's too many failure points for me that I don't like that.
Yeah.
All right. So, how are we feeling so far about the rules? Now, there are some other things we're going to show in a second, but how are you feeling so far about the Croneseers Pariahs?
So I like the skirmish ability on the Doomfire Warlocks. It makes them actually an interesting choice, and I like the fact that I can use the bloody Old Spice in any phase if my cauldron's full. But for what you're losing to get these so far, is that worth it?
Yeah. So far right now, this feels like something that would be really fun to take at my local game store, maybe a pickup or an RTT. Right now, I'm not super inspired to take this to my next GT because I feel like I'm losing too much. But let's see what else comes to the party. Maybe the second page will convince us.
Hey, you could take the wizards and take the Nullstone.
I'm just going to ignore that one.
It's a tactic.
All right.
Okay.
The next thing, we do have a prayer law. So you do lose your spell law and your prayer law for the Daughters of Khaine book, but you do get 3 prayers. Now, as of the time of recording, uniques do not get access to this prayer law. Now, this may change, but at the time of recording, we're going to assume that the Croneseer cannot get into the Croneseer's spell law, prayer law. Yes, I see the irony, but let's ignore that one. That may get changed. That may get changed. So there are 3 prayers. There is how do you spell that?
Augury
of Battle. Yeah. Augury of Battle. Prayer, answer value 4, range of 14. If answered, pick 1 friendly Croneseer Pariah unit, wholly within range and visible to the chanter. Till the start of your next hero phase, it has a ward of 5 up. It's good.
Yeah, it's just a shame that it's a 4-up prayer where you get other prayers like Curse, which is a 4-up, which is a very impactful ability to change your 6-up ward to a 5-up ward. I think it could have been a 4-up ward for the prayer because it's only 1 unit. You're not doing it to multiple units, and it might have been a bit better.
I see why they wouldn't want to pull the trigger on a 4+ ward. I think what I'm thinking here is that this is nice for a Cauldron of Blood who doesn't have a filled up cup. And it might not be the 4-up ward against shooting, but they are a 5-up ward without restriction. So
they're not the worst. Or even like 30, sticking at turn 1 on those 30 Witch Elves that you can YOLO off or, whatever you want to do. Having a 5-up ward. And at least it's still the next hero phase as well. It's not just your turn.
Yeah, I like it. I like this particular prayer. The Auspicious Strike, which is a prayer of answer value 4, range of 14. If answered, pick 1 friendly Croneseer Pariah unit, wholly within range and visible to the chanter. Until your next hero phase, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon that targets a unit is a 1, that attacking unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of that weapon after all of its attacks have been resolved.
That's funny. You throw your 10 Witch Elves into 4 Iron Guts, and so this is kind of like a bit where my list I did is kind of based where it's like these units are 10 where I can move them up 6 inches for free in the hero phase, and I can just get them into combat quickly. They've got the bladed bucklers, so if they take it, they're getting their initial damage first, and if you get the 6s to hit, you're getting that automatic wound, the rend extra, yada yada. But it's mainly for the hit back. So you have 10 Witch Elves. On a 6, I'm doing a mortal wound to you on my armor save for the bladed buckler, and then if you're rolling a 1 to hit me, you're taking damage as well. And it's the fact of as I said, things like Iron Guts, or things that are like a decent number of attacks at a very high value, it can really hurt for your 110 point unit.
Isn't there already a spell or a prayer in Daughters of Khaine where it's like 1s are a mortal wound back?
Martyr's Sacrifice is when a model dies on a 5+, it does a mortal wound.
I thought there was. I swear there was a. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Hmm.
I swear there was a combination where you could have the shields doing mortals on 6s and 1s and some
I think
shenanigans.
Martyrs used to be on a 1, but I can't
maybe.
remember. But
Maybe I'm
yeah,
confusing.
I just think like throwing in 10 witch elves with this on is just fun into anything, because like it's not even like weight of dice from squigs or anything that has multiple damage and a lot of attacks. This could be really, really amusing.
Yeah, anything with a volume game, this is going
Yeah.
to be delicious. The last prayer is the Wings of the Crone Goddess. Answer value 3, so it's a little easier than the other 2, and a range of 14. If answered, pick one friendly Croneseer Pariah unit wholly within range and visible to the chanter. That unit can make a normal move and can fly until the end of the phase.
I mean, it's a non-spell version of fly for a unit in an army where you might not have any wizards, or you have a couple of wizards and you're not having that spell, because Doomfire Warlocks can't take the generic spell that lets you fly, or they can. I can't remember, but it's a free to cast, so you're casting on a 2-year cauldron. You know, good against some armies that might have screening again to get something in, like maybe like an avatar, get it into like a juicy target, like a wizard or a support hero, where you can just fly him over the screens. But you know, if you're limited on prayers, you're definitely taking the other 2 probably over this one.
So what I was thinking with this one is, so if we use the burnt offerings, let's say, for example, on the Croneseer to move 14 inches, how does my cauldron stay close by? I could use the Wings of the Crone Goddess to get it close to the, and then set myself up for the next turn. Now, it doesn't always work, and to your point, what am I going to do with the other prayers? And I think maybe that's where like Warlord or getting an extra enhancement some way is going to be critical. So you've got other prayers to chant, and not just be stuck with this one prayer.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting prayer lore. Any final commentary about the 3?
I wish I could have Auspicious Strike in the normal Daughters of Khaine book.
I wish I could have.
That'd be great.
I wish I could have the 5-up ward without having to try to race to the Blood Rights table ASAP to get the 5-up ward.
Yeah.
There's some good prayers, and yes, they might get clarified, and maybe the
A lot of higher casts, though. Like a lot of the current Daughters of Khaine book ones are frees, so you're getting them off on a 2. So the fact that like 2 of these, your good ones, are a 4, like having that +1, because you only can get, it doesn't stack from a cauldron or avatar. A 3 isn't that guaranteed.
50-50.
Yeah.
Actually, no, it's more than 50. It's a 3 is a 66% chance. Maths. It's Sunday, folks. I'm recording on Sunday. Maths doesn't exist on Sundays. All right. So the prayer lore done. It's all right. I guess we'll get an overall synopsis at the end. We have one command trait, 1 artifact, 1 grand strategy, and 3 battle tactics. Command trait is obviously only for the general. Roll a dice each time an enemy unit within 12 inches of this general receives a command. On a 5+, your opponent must spend an additional command point to receive that command. If they choose not to spend the additional command point, that command is not received. The command ability still counts as being issued, and the command point is spent, so is lost. So 5-up, we are going to be shutting down commands or making people spend more for their commands.
Which is fine. For considering you're not getting access to the other traits, I might still take High Priest over this in terms of book one, like generic ones. But I mean, if you've got a line of stuff that is shutting off commands, and then your general being on a cauldron is probably going to be up close near the fighting in this sort of build as well. Having that bubble of 12 inches, and it's not even wholly within, it's just within. Like, it's pretty cool. Like battle shock tests.
It especially when you put it like your general is on a cauldron of blood, that does make a very generous, big 12-inch aura.
Yeah.
It is only a 5-up, 1 in 3 chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a good roll.
It's cool.
But as you said, do you take something from the universal like High Priest or things like that
It's your value of money, I think, because like I just said, my cauldron might not get into combat till turn 2/3. So your first 2 turns, it's probably this isn't doing anything. While having something like High Priest, where you get to reroll that Heart of Fury, you get to reroll one of these other 2 spells to give it more of a chance of keeping that cauldron alive. You know, it might be better off with High Priest.
Almost feels like you've got to use the Wings of the Crone Goddess to get it into combat. Maybe put on the 5-up ward from some other priest to like buff it up, and then get that early cauldron ability up in turn 1. I guess if you're going to commit, you're going to have to do that sequence.
Yeah, and as we said before about having 2 cauldrons, it means you could potentially have one to just throw in and do that.
I personally, I think would run double cauldron. If I was running Armies of Renown, I think double cauldron, you've got to. I think because if you lose 1 cauldron, you only got 1.
Yeah,
half the Crone's abilities disappear.
Yeah.
You got 1 artifact once per battle before carrying out the Blood Revels. Reveals all heroic action. The bearer can say that it will consult the Rune of the Weave. If you do so, when they carry out the heroic action, add 1 to the roll to determine whether the Cauldron of Blood becomes full. So now we go from a 4 to a 3.
Yeah, feel it's a high cost to have an artifact to make it a 3-up. Again, if the ability had been a 3-up for your heroic action and then a 2-up with this, it makes it a bit more digestible. But having to lose your artifact and the command, your heroic action to do something that's a 3-up now roll is painful.
It does make the rule better, and I do feel much more confident at a 3. But the risk of losing a hero and then rolling a 1 or a 2, 1 in 3 chance, it's not enough guarantee. When I can have a Stormcaster turn or do Translocate on a 2-up, like why can't I have a much better roll?
Also, like this is potentially if you're taking Warlord for prayers or something, this is where your only artifact is going to be. So no Arcane Tomb, which can be tough.
I was going to ask you about that because do you take a single artifact and double prayers, or do you take single prayer and double artifact?
Yeah.
I'm going double prayer. I'm going double prayer.
Yeah. I'm also double prayer. Especially if the Crone gets them, which we talk about later. It just really even without that, having that flexibility on your 2 cauldrons is probably better to have.
Yeah. 1 grand strategy. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy. By the way, Hasten of the Inevitable. You complete the grand strategy if there is 1 or more friendly units wholly within 6 inches of the long battlefield edge of enemy territory and more than 6 inches from your territory. So basically, it's like,
just have to have 1 in your opponent's and 1 in yours. I mean, if you got Canary still alive, Shadeborn still alive, you're taking battle line Warlocks. It gives you at least a movement to be able to set up for that. But it means, you A, have to keep those things alive, and B, from turn 4, you're going to have to start heading towards those edges and making sure you're safe. Especially if this army is a very kind of more push forwards, I think, kind of style thing, or like MSU doing little shenanigans with touching points with the Crone's ability. But yeah, you got to keep something alive that can get to the edges for this to work. So it's risky.
So this means you've got to take either a unit of Khainite Shadow Stalkers or you take the Shadeborn.
Yeah,
like this is an easy grand strategy to achieve.
You take the Shadeborn and hide them in a corner all game.
The Shadow Stalkers or the Shadeborn, and as long as it is basically in a corner and you're on the long field, the long battlefield edge, you're sweet. This is as easy as like Slaanesh and Tzeentch. Just don't die. Just don't die.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 3 battle tactics. I'll get your feedback as we go through them. Murder the Unbeliever. Pick 1 enemy unit within 3 inches of a friendly Croneseer Pariah Cauldron of Blood. You complete this tactic at the end of this turn if the enemy has been destroyed.
I mean, that could be pretty easy depending the circumstance. But if you've got a hero phase attack from a Cauldron and your combat 1 and shooting and other stuff, you should be able to kill something within 3 inches.
Yeah, if you do the maths hammer and you pick the right target, you can do this pretty easily if you use let's say, for example, Winds of the Crone Goddess to get into combat. If you're out of combat, you can shut off the commands within 3 inches, so makes them a bit more a bit easier to kill. The cauldron, whether it's the Avatar sword or the Blades of Khaine, like it's got a decent attack profile, and you can chip away as well with the shooting attack as well. There's enough in here to do this.
Yeah, and it doesn't speculate it has to be the cauldron, which is great because sometimes they say it's got to be that thing. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, great. Purge the flock. Pick one objective that's controlled by your opponent. You complete this battle tactic if you control that objective at the end of this turn, and there are no enemy models contesting this objective.
Yeah. So if you got your Canary or something, you're just dropping them down. It's like potentially an easy turn 1 tactic, especially if they're making you go first.
See, I was going a little bit more list techy. I was thinking about using the Burnt Offering to shut off unless there's heroes or monsters. Let's say there's a battle line idiot unit just sitting there with no heroes, no monsters supporting it. You're like, shut it off, and I claim it with my tippy toe.
Yeah, that too. It's easy. It's great.
Although it does have no enemy models contesting it, so even though they can't control it, you'd have to kill them, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
But I'm just being cheeky.
Yeah.
The last one is Proclamation of
Hagg.
Yeah, I was actually going to say it. I You complete this tactic at the end of this turn if you used more command abilities than your opponent this turn. This is an interesting one.
Especially if you're turning off your opponent's command abilities. Yeah.
Or even if you're going second, right? If you go at the bottom of the turn, you know how many command points they've got left. You know how many you've got left. You can plan out a pretty easy sequence, whether it's a forced run, whether it's a charge. Like it's
you
not
can just
too hard.
Totally not engage for a turn and get it. Like, don't give them redeploy. Don't give them an all-out defense.
Plus, if you go second and you pick the Generals Handbook special little ability to give yourself an extra command as opposed to a this is a good little one, but probably if you go second. Cool.
Yep.
This is the Army of Renown. Now that we've talked about it, how do you feel about this as a Daughters of Khaine player?
So as a fun, gimmicky playing this, as you said, maybe for an RTT where you're not really too much in the stakes for it, I think it could be amusing to play. I think it's got some fun little tweaks and twists you can do. I think if you're going to a 5-game tournament where you're actually wanting to do well, you're just losing too much on this. As you said, like the fact if you no longer have access to Mindrazor, you no longer have access to the Daughters of Khaine prayers, you don't have the access to the Daughters of Khaine blood rites, you're stripping out half your army, which subjectively is the better units for a lot of people, like Morathi, bow snakes, combat snakes. You're not getting them in this army. So you're literally down to Witch Elves, Witch Elves, Sister Slaughter, Canary, Doomfire Warlocks, Avatars, and Cauldron. Because you can't take any allies either. And, none of those are big damaging units without Mindrazor. Like, 30 Witch Elves with Mindrazor and High Gladiatrix is amazing. They will destroy a lot of things. Not having the Mindrazor for the damage. Yeah, you get the Rend. You can get on the 6, you can get the free wound. But only having that damage one just doesn't cut it against a lot of the bigger armies that you're going to be facing on those higher tables.
Let's pretend that you ran this at LVO. What are some of maybe the challenges you think you would have faced, maybe either at the opponents or even maybe the meta that you saw in the current landscape? Do you think like you just come up against, like, for example, you mentioned you ran into Nurgle, right?
Yeah.
How do you think this would go against Nurgle? Now, they're not the big bad, but how do you think they would have gone in your matchups?
Yeah, I mean, not great. Yeah, you get to do some movement stuff, but then they still get to do the counter charges on you. You're not necessarily worried about the Rend against those armies, but it's things like the rights table. I think the rights table for Daughters is so big, being able to have +2s to hit on wound on most of your armies by turn 3 or 4, depending if you're Hagg Nar or not. Being able to get those +1s to charge and run early, having that movement presence, actually being able to stack something up and get the ward save. I think losing all of the combined things that you lose, especially so like the command traits, the artifacts, it's such a combination of stuff that you're losing. I just don't think you're getting that added value for that loss.
This reminds me of a lot of when I was chatting to Freddie about Sylvaneth, the Dawnbringers Sylvaneth. Like, the rules are fun. They are really cool and very interesting and different way to play your faction.
Yeah.
But Sylvaneth lose strike and fade using the Dawnbringers rules. And that is just, it's just too much. Like, Sylvaneth without strike and fade is just too much. And I feel like with Daughters without the Blood Rights table, and in addition to the spell law, the prayer law, the artifacts, the battle tactics,
heroic actions,
you are giving up more than you're getting. And I think to that, I'm taking the Croneseer and I'm just putting it into the average average Daughters list.
Yeah,
just like Sylvaneth's doing with the Balthanos into traditional Sylvaneth. That's kind of where I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
Maybe someone smarter in the chat will prove me wrong and they'll go 5-0 with this, and I'll be interviewing you. And feel free in the meantime to tell me in the chat what you think. But right now, I'm just not feeling it. If the Crone was like a 300 or 400 point like Ionis, a really killy priest that can go in and slap, maybe I don't feel like I've lost as much, because the damage that I would get from my snakes and Morathi, I've countered at least with Witch Elves and a killy minor hero, or
Yeah, I mean, even the tactics, like, there's 2 of those that you can do turn 1 and stuff. One, you need to be in that kind of the combat when you're selecting it within that 3 inches. But if you think about the Daughters of Khaine one, you've got the Canary or the Shadowstalker one. You've got charge with 3 units. You've got have 2 units from your starting army in your opponent's zone. You've got destroy 2 chaos units, depending on which one. There's so many ones which are like better for any turn, where they're not as subjective as those. So yeah, I just think so this is what I came up with as kind of a fun play around.
Do you want to give me the elevator pitch? Because after this, we're going to talk a little bit and review where Daughters of Khaine stand as a battle tome in general.
Yeah. So the elevator pitch for this is basically kind of going for like an MSU kind of hit and run, or just have board presence kind of list. So the idea behind this is, like, if there is an enemy unit I need to get it in, I need to hurt in combat, I have 2 cauldrons and an avatar combined together that could go into it and do quite a lot of damage spill, especially with those 6s. If you can spike with them, they're going to get the Ren free with the auto wounds. The cauldrons, the avatar, for those that don't know them, they're 4 attacks, freeze, Ren 2, free damage normally. So being able to have that auto pass through at Ren free could be pretty cool. As you said before, we take the 2 cauldrons because you want to be able to buff it. I take 1 as a Slaughter Queen to give me that additional dispel, because the army does not have much magic. And I go for the Warlord for the double prayer, because I want to have the options in my prayer. Yeah, I've given some to the Crone in this one, but essentially I would just, if she didn't have access to it, I would just take Augury of Battle and replace it for maybe like Curse. Or even heal. I like keeping heal in there, just especially because if you're doing D6 damage to your heroes and you spike that 6, I want to be a way of getting some of that back, since I can't heroic heal it in that turn. So at least getting some back. And then with the rest of it, it's just kind of like MSU. So the Heart of Fury is great for keeping in combat, keeping those cauldrons and the avatar alive. A lot of people that haven't played against avatars, because you don't see them as much, they're immune to monstrous actions, and they get to do 2. So because they're a 9 wound behemoth, they're not a monster, they benefit from cover. So you can put Mystic Shield in these things, they'll always get all out defense if you have the point. And with the -1 damage, they're such a tank versus monsters that you can just sit one in and be able to tank a lot of damage. And a lot of opponents might not be ready for that. And then with the other units, like the MSU Witch Elves, it's the same thing, where it's, as I said before, I put the Auspicious Spike on them. I kind of throw 10 in, just let it go and do some damage. Try and maybe do it on a corner of a unit. So, because I don't care what damage I'm doing to you, it's what you're doing back to yourself. So I'm kind of trying to limit how much I'm taking and maybe just be there and be a pain, especially if I can, have that double ability and remove your opponent's command points, like tactic command abilities, sorry. But then also being able to steal the objectives. So again, having that ability to put it twice on a unit of witch elves. So you have 2 units of witch elves being able to steal an objective by putting a foot on it, if they've got a big chunk of stuff. So it's kind of like pulling things backwards and forwards, having the Doomfire Warlock getting away and having one of them being able to potentially retreat, and just kind of trying to keep out of combats that you don't need to be in while hitting the ones that you do, but still being able to score 5 points a turn.
You get a lot of tools here. That's what I really like. It's, you haven't gone in and just absolutely invested in double reinforcing those witch elves. You could make the Doomfire Warlocks a unit of 10 where you get the extra benefit to their casting, but there's a lot of board control and a lot of board presence here, and I find that fascinating when supported by the double cauldron and the Croneseer as well. So I like it. I think this would go relatively well at an RTT, but I think, as you've already said, come into a GT and maybe some of the bigger boys on game 2, this does hit a bunch of roadblocks. So you need all of the prayers and divine intervention to
you hit Seraphon with Croak, and they just they're doing D6 mauls to everything within 18 or whatever, and a lot of this is just going to fold. So.
Let's see what you could run like 3 cauldrons.
Oh, you could just
run 3 cauldrons.
And I think that's the fun idea is you could run. I mean, remember you can get 4 in a list, so you could really do 4 cauldrons if you wanted to with the Croneseer and not even bother with the Gladiatrix and just go minimum, witch elves and just have a laugh of it, or even the Doomfire Warlocks. Just take those for screens.
I want to see, I'm sure someone on TTS is going to do like 3 or 4 Blood Rack shrines, because at 160 points, that is just ridiculous. But
you can't on this list, though.
Yeah. No, I know. Let me finish my story. But yes, I think that there's some really good stuff in here. But to your point, I probably would not take this to an RTT. But here's a good example. If you are thinking about turning the Army of Renown, or maybe you just want something different for the remainder of the Generals Handbook.
Yeah. And with that list going in with those the Bloodwrack shrines in Krethusa Nar, they can actually have some play to them, because if you're retreating and charging with those D3 mortal wound impacts from the cauldrons, you can actually get some good damage with them, because the Bloodwrack Medusas, they have an okay attack profile.
I really like them. I was using them as little assassins to fly them up and then spread their little aura of damage. They were that's what I was doing with my little assassin. Medusae, but we're not here to talk about that. We're now to take a step back and go, well, if Daughters of Khaine Army of Renown isn't the best, let's revisit maybe and look at what makes a current Daughters of Khaine list successful, knowing that we've got the new battle tactic. If you take the Nullstone icon or Nullstone adornment, we have some point adjustments, we have some various things. Where do we stand? And I will pause on the temples because we'll go into the actual temple rules. But how do you think about at an allegiance level we stand so far? As you mentioned, we've got a great heroic action. We've got the blood rights table. We've got the fanatical faith. We have the battle fury. How do you think they stack up right now?
I think they're pretty good, and especially though we didn't have much of a change in the current Battlescroll, having things like Nurgle losing the Bowpiper's pile-in ability is really big for an army like us, where we want to get in and fight with a lot of our stuff. And even Khorne not necessarily having Be'lakor anymore, because of the, it's a bit more problematic to have him. I just think I think it actually helps us a bit, and there's been some hits to some other armies which are a bit more powerful, like KO got a big points hit. Seraphon, they got some hits for their magic and stuff, for the amount of points they're gathering. I think it puts us in a little bit of a step up. I know we didn't get much in terms of points. I think my list went down maybe 20 or 30 points, which isn't really enough to put anything much in, but then it gives me a triumph bid. Which most of the time I like having, just to prevent my opponent having a triumph. But yeah, it's got some good options. I think, you don't really see much of Crave or Dry Chicken F. It's usually Xanthakai, Cobra Kai with the snakes, Calibron with Morathi and the bow snake, because you can keep that big block of 15 bow snakes safe, and Hagg Nar and Kelt Nar, that are the big ones. Kelt Nar has been popular recently because of they're good against, like, having that ability to get out of those murder lusts from Khorne and being able to retreat and charge has been pretty useful to have.
I was mostly, what was I? I was Kelt Nar, I think. Because Kelt Nar is +1 on the charge. I'm just bringing up my rules.
That's Dry Chicken F.
Oh, no, then I was Drychi. Last time I was using Daughters, I was running Drychi because I was just running double-bladed Witch Elves for days, just charging in for lols and just murder blending everyone.
Yeah. You can stack up some good Ren with that.
Yeah, really good rent. Yeah. Can I ask you though, just to like step back for a second, because for the last good hour we've talked about the pros and cons of the Armies of Renown, and one of their biggest bugbears is the loss of the blood rights table. Yeah. So for someone who maybe pick up this box for the first time and they've never really played Daughters of Khaine, or they don't quite understand why we keep talking about the loss of the blood rights being so impactful, because it is only really +1 to run, +1 to charge, +1 to hit. So what? Turn 3, great. They're not that beneficial. I can use all-out attack. But help our people understand why this is such an important aspect to our, I guess, identity.
So for Daughters of Khaine, being able to stack these, because remember, they do stack for those people that don't play Daughters of Khaine. And if you're Daughters of Khaine have abilities where you can increase your blood right table as well. So Hagg Nar, you automatically start at battle round 2. Witch Brew increases it for 1 turn by 1. There's a prayer that increases it by 1. The Medusa and the Mefusler can increase it on snakes by 1. So there's ways of being able to stack these abilities, and kind of even like turn 2, 3, you can be on that battle round 5 on 1 unit or multiple units. The army-wide benefit of why the blood right is so important is Daughters of Khaine are not an army that have access to a lot of command points. We don't really have many ways of getting command points in our army. So having an army where I don't have to all-out attack, and most of the time I'm going to be on 2s, is great. It's just that CP I can then use for other things than all-out attacking on 1 unit. And also against armies that have got -1s to hit, it still means we can get solid hits in, especially for all our damage. Is, we're not doing damage really with magic. A lot of our armies, unless you're going tilt into bow snakes, are not doing a lot of damage from shooting. So we need to do that damage in combat. So being able to get the +1 across your whole army to hit and wound is great. Being able to get Witch Elves and Sisters Slaughter, where you're running and charging, being able to get that +1/+1, again, super good, being able to get around the board a bit faster.
Even simple things like I can't fail a 3-inch charge.
Yeah.
Because it's 1+1/+1. Or something as impactful as the fact that you +1 to wound, where there's very little -1 to wound in the game. And bringing a 3 to a 2 or a 2 to 3, especially with some of these high damage items, whether it's Morathi or an Avatar or, snakes, insane. So it's a really good ability, and that's kind of where what we keep saying, like, it's cool rules, the Armies of Renown, but I lose so much by not having the blood rights, which then gets us talking a little bit about the rules. So, okay, well, you mentioned Hagg Nar, Xanthakai, and Calibron. Are there particular reasons why you think they're currently the most strongest piece?
So Hagg Nar is, if you're going in a build like I usually go, is not only are you getting that +1 early, so your avatars turn 2 are hitting on 2s, turn 3 they're hitting on 2s or wounding on 2s, makes benefit of only having that 4 attacks. So like the chance of you missing is a lot less. You're getting a lot more bang for your buck. Also, what doesn't say on here for Hagg Nar, because it's kind of a weird rule on the scroll, is if you're Hagg Nar, you can take a Cauldron of Blood, a Slaughter Queen, or a Hag Queen as a free behemoth. So again, you could have that Cauldron of Blood with an avatar on, and then 4 for avatars if you wanted to. So it just gives you a bit more, push and flexibility for your army. Xanthakai, Cobra Kai, as a lot of people call it, is good. That attack on, you don't see as much now. For a while, it was seen a lot because a lot of people were taking the melee combat snakes. Mainly, I think when you lost the the 4-up rally on more than 10 wounds. You saw it a lot more because you'd see blocks of 15 combat snakes. They could go in, do a lot of damage, take that damage back, do more damage, pop out, and still have a couple of guys left, which are then getting rallied on a 4-up next turn at 2 wounds a model. You could just get such good cycle for your money. So that's kind of died down a bit. In exchange, now you're seeing more Hagg Nar for that strike and fade, being able to retreat and charge across your whole army, including Morathi. So being able to like get her out of tar pits and get her into things that she wants to be fighting again. And then Calibron, as I said, you usually see that with the 15 bow snakes and Morathi, just because each of the command ability, you can teleport the unit to the maximum range where they can still do a lot of damage, but then it's just reducing how much stuff that can threaten that unit, because 15 bow snakes is like 540 points a sign. So it's not a unit you want to get stuck in and killed. It wants to be kind of at that max range.
Yeah, they're 580, they're 180 each. So yeah, you just near 600 points. The other one to call out as well is we talked a bit about the hatred of chaos battle tactic, where Hagg Nar and Hagg Nar does what the faction wants to do if you go into chaos. So
kill 2 chaos units and you get a tactic. So
it's it's a good
some
one.
armies that's really easy to get.
Yeah, and you're not sacrificing anything, because if you go to a GT and you don't play a chaos army, who cares? But if you do, you've now got one extra tactic up your sleeve. So always good. Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, I've always wanted the day for the Kraith to become good, and I just never have seen
the strike last.
Yeah.
Because ogres get it, but they're 4 wounds a model with like a 4-up armor save, and they hit hard. You're putting this on 10 or 20 Sisters of Slaughter, because it has to be Sisters of Slaughter, not Witch Elves, which are 10 points more. And by the time the unit gets to fight back, it's probably lost most of its efficiency.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, oh man, I wish I had that 5-up ward from the Armies of Renown on the Kraith, but I can't. I tend to agree. Although I love my Drakey, I still think there's value with Drakey, but it's very one-dimensional.
I think with the Kraith as well, it is on a 4-up too. So, because you can only do it on those Sisters of Slaughter units, so really you maybe have 3 or 4 units. It's just, in comparison to the other sub-factions, they're just more value.
Yeah. You've got a whole bunch of, ignore that. Oh, no, that's right. Yeah. I'm like, oh, no, I forgot to change the, no, I do. No, smart. Go me. So of your command traits, is there one in particular that you prefer?
Yeah, so like 90% of the time, I will still take Zealous, like most Daughters of Khaine, will still take Zealous Orator, because it's limited to 10 wounds, but that's still 10 wounds on a 4-up for your bow snakes or your expensive units, or even just for Witch Elves, being able to bring that unit of 30 down. I lost 15 this turn. I can bring 10 back. That's pretty good. Most of the others, I don't really see as much, apart from maybe High Priest. And again, that's for being able to reliably pop up the Heart of Fury.
Don't make me. Actually, you fueled by revenge as well. It's, if you're building snakes, that one is that's very defined. Like it's you build it up, you go and release the snakes. But yes, you're right. Zealous Orator is like 90% of list. It's just too good. It's just, even with the cap, it's just too good.
And because it's on your general, so it's an 18-inch bubble as well. So it's just such the value of what you're getting is especially for an army that have wafer thin armor a lot of the time.
Do you see value at all in taking like Shaman of the Chilled Lands?
Because we can only take it really on like a Medusa. That's a 1-cast wizard. We don't have any, like, the only more than 1-cast wizard we have is Morathi, and she can't dig it anyway. Yeah. It's kind of why I was hoping that the Crone Herald would be like more than one prayer, just because we don't have that kind of flexibility in the army.
No, we don't. No, I agree. I agree with you. And to be honest with you, as we mentioned, Hoarfrost, not the spell you really need.
I used to have Blizzard as my kind of backup spell when I had the second Medusa, and a lot of the time that wasn't. It was more of a defensive thing because it made people think twice about throwing that, Stonehorn in turn one or something silly. But then, I had to drop it to get the points in for the Crone.
Yeah, I mean, if you can fly, or move into range and then have that defensive, like I'm going to blizzard you if you come within range. But you probably see you often get like 1 or 2 turns of blizzard at most.
Okay.
So, like
I got blizzard off twice at LVO. One time it did something good. One time it did nothing. It nearly killed my own wizard. So it's very, people. A lot of times it can do devastating things, but in an army that hasn't got a lot of ways to get increases to cast apart from primal dice, and a lot of time you need to use that primal dice on Mind Razor, which is a lot more reliable to have. It's you just don't really see it as much played.
Or super cheap wizards like Gitz or Skaven.
Oh yeah,
if you can get those really dirt cheap wizards, cool, be free. Yeah. For us, we don't have either. Let's talk those artifacts. Where are you standing on artifacts? I imagine it's probably very similar to what we've seen in the past, but I'll let you.
So for a long time, I was running Crown of Woe. Crown of Woe is a really cool ability because as soon as it kills something, it's that 15-inch aura, and being able to kind of hit a lot of armies where, hey, look, you don't get to use your Inspiring Presence anymore. Gets things like that. Really, really good. But recently, you're seeing like a lot more OBR and Death armies coming back again, and it just doesn't do anything. I think I played against an event where it's mostly demons or OBR I ended up facing, and it just doesn't really do anything because you've got to do a lot of damage for that Bravery 10 to start hurting them with the Crown of Woe. It helps having the rally again, but because I'm having to reduce down what I've got because I need to take the Acolytes and not the Warlord. If I took Warlord, I'd probably take an extra artifact and have this in still. But I need the Arcane Tome on my High Gladiatrix to get the Acolytes.
I'm going to maybe challenge what you just said, and I'm going to challenge you in a way of the meta shift, right? So we saw LVO and a few other events around a similar time where Cities of Sigmar armies are finally being painted up and going to hit the tables pretty soon, probably more than we realize. We also have Flesh Eater Courts who are going to start hitting the table. Now, they are types of armies who are going to love Rally. They're going to love Inspiring Presence. Do you think if they start hitting the tables more, the Crown of Woe becomes as valuable as it used to be?
I mean, I've played there's a few cities in our area, and it didn't really come into effect when I played it. And I actually have a Feck army that I've been playing in the background. I think I've played 5 games with it and won 5 games with it. But that's not because of the power of the army. It's how people are fighting against it. Feck are very interesting, but they're definitely an army you need to kind of target, not spread your damage. I actually kind of think my daughter's army would destroy my Feck army, and mainly because the rally doesn't necessarily matter. So a lot of the Feck units are Bravery 10, and a lot of the stuff they're getting back is from Noble Deeds or their other abilities that isn't rally. So, and because a lot of the time they're grinding as well, they're not really able to do the rally anyway because they're in combat. So I think, yeah, it's still a good ability to have. It's just, is it worth more right now than an Arcane Tomb with Acolytes to be able to help shut down spells or get Mind Razor off? Because again, getting Mind Razor onto that unit of 30 Witch Elves into those Flesh Eater Courts is going to be a field day because their armor saves aren't great.
100%. I just had to ask the question because the meta is shifting, and OBR is a little bit on the decline. There's a few other armies who got points adjustments or the popularity, or people like, at least the internet's like, oh, Flesh Eater Courts, Flesh Eater Courts. Okay, how does the evolving meta shift our thinking? And the Crown of Woe is still good, but to your point, the fact we don't have many wizards, the fact that the value of things like Mind Razor and other spells are just as valuable, if not more valuable to us. I see the I do see the argument, but
Crystal Heart is a fun one. If you, again, you kind of got to build your army for it, but you take the Crystal Heart and then you take the one of the good endless spells or even the Giant Snake, and being able to throw it out at double range, you can do some really interesting stuff with that. But again, because we don't really have any extras to cast apart from primal dice, and because you're very limited on the spells you're going to be doing most of the time anyway, it's going to be great for turn one, and then the rest of the game is kind of,
I've always leaned into the Daughters of Khaine priest ones more, to be honest. Like, if I don't want to take Warlord, for example, getting the Blood Sigil is a helpful little enhancement.
Yeah.
Or even the Khainite pendant. If there's a prayer that I want to get off and I must get off, so once per battle, get it out there. I actually really like.
I wish there was one that gave us a second prayer. So then at least taking Warlord and having the 2 prayer choices would be useful.
Agreed, but it's not there. But you can get the Shadow Stone for the +1 to cast, which is not bad to get that Mind Razor off, as we've already talked as well. So, I see the argument, and I don't have a one artifact rules them all, and obviously watching how the meta shifts. But there's a couple of good options for us. This is where you get really stuck, because I feel like a kid in a candy store. If you ask me, Anthony, pick one spell or pick one prayer, I couldn't. There's at least 2 to 3 in each of these laws where I'm like, I want you. I want Mirror Dance. I want Mind Razor. I want Steed of Shadows. I want the Withering is one that's really surprised me as I play with it more and more.
Yeah.
Even
Shroud of Despair against some of those, as you just said, against Flesh Eater Courts. Oh, your Bravery 10 is now down to potentially Bravery 7.
Pit of Shades is the one that actually surprised me the most. When Morathi knows the entire spell lore, I cast it, I'm like, oh, this is really good. I really like Pit of Shades. It's not one that you pick automatically, but when it's in your toolbox, actually, it becomes really good.
Especially since we don't have, like, Daughters of Khaine are an army that can do a lot of damage, but not mortal wound damage. Like, we have the Medusas that can do their scream. Morathi has her spell. Yeah, we can get mortal wounds on 6s with the bow snakes, but it's in comparison to other armies that can just throw out mortal wounds. We just don't have that. So yeah, it's and again, we have the limit of we have priests and then we have wizards, but they're not, we're not in competition against some of our armies with them.
Talked about the prayer law for a minute. What are your favorite ones? Like, let's say you've got 3 you can choose from.
So
top 3.
For me, usually I have again, because I run the avatars, is Crimson Rejuvenation. So most of the time it's going off on a 2, 14-inch range, D3 mortal wounds. Heals D3. When I have these avatars, which are -1 damage, they're in a forest, they're my tanky thing, being able to chuck 3 wounds back on them. Very good. Like, just keeping them in the fight for longer, or even my Cauldron. Keeping my Cauldron of Blood, I can do a Heroic Recovery, I can do a Crimson Rejuvenation. And again, being on a 2+ most of the time is pretty good. Blessing, I used to see more, but then since our Fanatical Faith went down to a 6, you just don't really see its worth anymore. Catechism of Murder used to be great, but now we can do that as a command ability. It's kind of taken a step back a bit more. I usually would go with Sacrament of Blood, which is +1 to the rights table for the turn, because then you can stack it up on that unit.
See, I use Catechism as a 1-2 punch, where I use the command ability on one, Catechism on the other, or if Catechism fails, I've still got the command ability as a backup, and I can either go 2 in and Murder Blender, or I've got a fail safe if one fails.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem with it is we only... So in the Morathi build list, you don't have any priests usually. And in a lot of other lists, you might have 1 or 2 priests. Because usually in the Morathi one, it's the Melusai for the general.
Oh, you're talking Morathi with
the bow snakes. Yeah. Which is one you see most of the time. Which is why they don't have the Heart of Fury. And like for me, in my daughter's army, I usually only have 1 or maybe 2 priests. And I'm usually doing turn 1 or 2 Heart of Fury. So then the rest of the time, I'm probably trying to use that prayer to heal. Or even on the Slaughter Queen, having that ability to have always strikes first for the turn can be pretty cool as well. So a lot of the other ones just to really take a step back of being able to get them out, which is why I would love the ability to have 2 prayers.
Yeah, usually I've got a priest on Cauldron and then 1 priest on foot, because I value the sippy cup too much.
Yeah. I do miss the sippy cup.
Oh, God bless the CP Cup.
Yeah.
CP Cup
It's
is the
that
greatest.
thing. It's like so for those that don't play Daughters of Khaine, you can either have a Hagg Queen on Cauldron, which is the same combat profile as a Slaughter Queen. The main difference is the Hagg Queen gives you it's an ability to put on a unit +1 to your rights, or you could have the Slaughter Queen, which gives you an extra dispel and gives you a command ability that lets you attack in the hero phase. So both are good, both have play, but a lot of the time, if you've got like that Hagg Queen with the Sippy Cup, with Sacrament of Blood, potentially in Hagg Nar, or even with snakes, and a snake that can then buff the combat snakes, you could have that turn 5 abilities pretty quickly.
I play Morathi with the Witch Elf, so I've always got that command ability. But if I dropped Morathi, I would definitely need the Slaughter Queen. Like,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I guess it depends on builds, right, and what we prefer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
And
think
then,
like Covenant of
with
the
the prayers.
Ironheart is just. I was just gonna say Covenant of the Ironheart is one I just rarely.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah. And then with the spells, Mind Razor is usually the one you'll always see. But Withering is a pretty solid spell too. The fact if it's like everything targeting that unit means you like all those witch elves, if you're getting them up in your face, especially when you're taking Drychi Ganef for the extra rend on the charge, you can get some serious damage on stuff quite early.
Can I tell you what my little secret is?
Mm-hmm.
I've always got Mind Razor and the Withering. And most people, my opponents, see Mind Razor and the Withering, and they always try to unbind Mind Razor. That's the one I care about the least.
Okay.
I would rather get off the Withering because it's easier to cast, and +1 to wound is much more valuable in a lot of situations than the +1 rend. Sure, the +1 rend is great. Don't get me wrong. Oh, sorry, the +1 damage, and I love Mind Razor. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the Withering is sneaky good. It is sneaky good.
Yeah, I mean, it's the weight of dice thing, where if you're putting 20 or 30 Witch Elf attacks onto something big, and you now got that extra 1 to wound, plus the Gladiatrix in range, which changes their wound value, wounding on 2s is fun.
Even it allows me to use the Sippy Cup and the Blood Rights table on one unit to get them to the +1 to wound. And then the Withering, even in turn 2, I can still get Morathi, for example, on 2s to wound, while the Witch Elves or the Combat Snakes or something else has had the focus of the Sippy Cup and the Blood Rights table. So
and 18 inches is a pretty good range as well.
Mirror Dance has always been helpful. Pit of Shades is one that I've used more and more and more. And Seed of Shadows I found really good in combination with the Medusae, the wizard one, because then I can just fly and then burst at its shooting attack.
I wish Mirror Dance let you do it in combat. Because having that rubbish hero suddenly swap out for like a Cauldron of Blood or something is just great fun.
There's good spells.
Yeah.
Shroud of Despair is probably the one that I use the least.
Yeah. It's if you are looking at going over with the Shadeborn, Mirror Dance can be kind of amusing.
I was just thinking that actually, literally thinking about that, like that little.
Yeah. Turn 1, teleport her somewhere good, and you swap her with Morathi, and
not bad. Oh, all right. There's some stuff going on here. I like this thinking. We've talked a little bit about this. I might just fast track this one really quickly. Just elevator pitch. You said Hoarfrost, generally not that valuable to us. It's okay, but sure. Like if I can get a 2s to wound on, again, Morathi or Snakes or something, avatars, without going into the Blood Brides, sure, it gets me a little bit earlier in the fight sequence. Yeah. But
Hoarfrost would be good in the Regiment of Renown if you could take it in the Regiment of Renown. Because they can't get Mind Razor or, But yeah, it's Rupture you just don't really see much because I can't remember the last time I saw an incarnate.
Really, Zinch is like the one that's mostly running it these days. Then you've
Blizzard's cool, but it's a 12.
Yeah. We've really got to go in Taurian Locusts, and we don't have a lot of wizards, so getting that to get the extra cast is just hard.
Yeah. And you're not casting that on Morathi.
No, God, no. No.
That'd be a bad day.
Oh my God. No. Do you have any particular, if you were going to drop the wizards altogether, would you go any of these? Or what would your Nullstone adornment be?
I would go for Witchstone where I can keep dispelling as long as I dispel. Is it the Nullstone? I'd probably go with that one.
The hand-carved Nullstone icon.
Yeah, where if you because at least then that way it gives you technically unlimited dispels as long as you can actually dispel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably the good pick because we just don't have many wizards. I don't want to use a heroic action to get an unbind. So it does put a target on that wizard's head now. Like you've got to get rid of the Nullstone icon, but probably the most useful.
I think some of the other ones are only because the pouch is only once per battle.
The pouch is good defense if like you're in blizzard range and you're like, right, okay, I'll wave that one critical spell. I just need you to primal miscast.
Yeah.
But where are you at grand strategy wise?
So again, 90% of the time for Daughters of Khaine, you will see Bloodthirsty Zealots.
Yeah.
Because being out, just even if you get tabled, you get it. And most of the time, your stuff's going to be in combat anyway, unless you're really trying to avoid things. Recently, I've been trying to also run Conquered in the Name of Khaine when I have the 4 avatars, just because, again, it's a Cauldron or Avatar of Khaine. The only issue with that is, a lot of the times you're in the middle of the table having big fights and grindy. So on those maps where it's only an 11-inch deployment, it could be pretty tough. And then that's really it in terms of I've looked at Naught But Destruction before, just because again, the fact that the avatars can destroy terrain. Yeah. But again, if they're off trying to do that, they're not necessarily on your front lines doing the work they need to be doing. The spellcasting savants, our wizards are not great to keep alive. It's too risky. And again, same with Control and Nexus. Most of the time, we might have 2 wizards maximum. So one of those goes down, which considering they're 5 or 6 wounds, 5 of armor save, 6 at ward save, pretty easy to happen.
Overshadow's not the worst. If I had to go to a tournament where no grand strategies from my book were available, maybe Overshadow. But I think to your point, Bloodthirsty Zealots is just so... It's an easy one. It plays well to our strengths. And you just have to make sure your little support heroes get into combat.
Yeah.
I had to really think about this with my Caneri to make sure that, my Caneri come down, they shoot and they run away. No, they need to move forward, get into combat and just fight once.
The games I've failed Bloodthirsty Zealots are the games when I table my opponent by turn 3 because there's nothing. I just can't get things into combat quick enough. Even just being able to get it physically in because there's so many things swarming around or just failing charges and stuff. I've lost it a couple of times with that. But then that's not the worst thing because your max points probably then anyway.
The one where I find that I'm most at risk is when I run a unit of bow snakes. Because now I've got to get them into combat. It's like, shit, shooting doesn't count. I need to get these in combat somehow. And yes, as the game's unfolding, there's not a lot of opportunities to get those bow snakes into combat.
But then at least if you're Calibron, turn 4 or 5, you can teleport them out 9/9. They get in the +1 with a reroll, so it gives you a bit more of a chance.
Yeah, but I'm not. I'm Drake Ganeth or Hagg Nar. Don't tell me things like if I was. No, I'm Drake Ganeth or Hagg Nar.
Yeah.
But this is some consideration. So if you are thinking Bloodthirsty Zealots, you just need to make sure those little support heroes or bow snakes or Caneri get into combat because you will fail it. And I've seen people fail that a lot.
Which is definitely something to think about if you're taking the Crone. Because of the fact that she's not something you really ever want in combat, because even with a 4 ward, 6 wounds, it's very easy to lose that. I mean, the number of times I've lost a Celestant Prime before he's even got a chance to hit because I've just whiffed my rolls.
But if she dies, it's fine because that plays into your grand strat.
Yep. You just don't want to lose her too early.
Correct. You don't want to lose her too early. But that kind of like gives us a good little overview of how we're thinking about Daughters of Khaine. And Dale has come up with another list, and I know this is a iteration, or maybe even is your LVO list. Oh no, it won't be over LVO list because you've got the Croneseer in there.
Yeah.
But talk to me a bit about like how would you run a GT type list right now, and what are you thinking from like I need this in my list, or I need to be able to handle this in my list?
So this is the kind of army I've been taking, which I've been going 4-1, 3-2 with in a lot of events. The only difference between this and like the LVO one or the list I was running before is I dropped the Medusa, the second Medusa I had for the Croneseer. This list is actually 1970 now. We forgot to take into account the points changes from the Cauldron going down 10, and or maybe it is actually, no, this one is 1990. Yes, because she's 170. So no, the points are right. So the way this army plays is I have one of those units of Witch Elves are actually 30, which is the one with the paired Sansas. So the points are correct in total, but it's just on this it's different.
I'll fix that. I'll fix that post production.
Okay, cool.
Sometimes it's bizarre. We'll fix that up.
So the way this army works is I have 4 avatars and a Cauldron Realm avatar on, which are very good at tanking, especially monsters, and they can do some good damage. Another thing a lot of people don't realize is that the avatars have that shooting 10-inch attack as well. So with having the Cauldron and 4 avatars, that's a lot of 6 attacks each at rend 1 damage, freeze and freeze. It's a lot of small shooting fire. It can really clear screens quite well, especially with the Medusa added in there as well with her scream ability. So being able to clear out screens or little tiny units, or even just whittle down some stuff, they're pretty good at it. Unless, sadly the rights table doesn't affect shooting. So if you get stuff that's a -1 to hit, could be a bit more annoying, but like it's an extra layer of attack. And then my main aim behind this army is to buff the big block of 30 Witch Elves. Witch Elves, 30 of them with the paired dagger is 91 attacks. With run and charge, with +1 to run, +1 to charge. A lot of the time, because I'm Hagg Nar, I'm going to be on +1 to hit quite easily, so they're hitting on 2s. The power of this army is the fact of the High Gladiatrix changes to all Witch Elves units or Sisters of Slaughter's units, their wound from a 4 to a 3. It actually changes it. It's not +1. Then the Avatars of Khaine, if you have a unit of Witch Elves wholly with a 9, get +1 to wound. Or you have the Blood Rights, which gives you +1 to wound. So very quickly, I can have 91 attacks, 2s to hit, 2s to wound, rend 2 with Mind Razor, and 2 damage with Mind Razor. There is not much in the game that has stood up to that so far. Like, I used it at Kippers, which is a BC tournament at the end of last year, and I went against OBR turn, I think it was game 4, game 5, and this guy was like, yeah, there's like a big shield Praetorian guys or whatever they are, 6 of them, which can get like a ridiculous armor save. They have ward save, they can heal, and he's like, oh, I've never lost this unit before, blah, blah, blah. And I took it off in 1 combat. Just went in, removed the unit, because 91 attacks, double damage. It's a lot. It's weight of dice. That's what it comes down to.
That's literally the key, right? Like, OPR safe stack and against a small volume. That's why my Gargants, like when I play Gargants, I hate OBR because I've got such little attacks that I need everyone to count. But when you look at 90 attacks and you divide that by 6, like weight of dice purely is on average 15 wounds to go through. Yeah. But
so there is also an added amusement to when I had run this before, which is when I had them in Wizard Finders against a wizard, that's +1 attack per model. And if the Heart of Fury rolls a 6 at the start of the combat phase, you get +1 attack and the -1 damage.
I was going to ask you about that because I remember one of my greatest moments was a unit of 30 Witch Elves going into the old coalesced Seraphon where they reduced damage. I got those double-bladed witch elves, +1 attack, with like Ren -2 because I was Drakey Ganeth as well, so I'm -2 like with the charge as well, and it was just murder city for these Carnosaurs, and like it was the old Saurus Guard, like just big block of just dead.
It happened to me at Northern Wastes against a Plague Bearer unit, and it was without the Biopiper. And I think I had like 20 Plague Bearers, but it was 121 attacks with the heart popping. And it had all the buffs as well, so it was just like dead unit. Like, yeah, it's brutal. So, and because they have run and charge, usually with the +1 to run, +1 with charge, it's really safe with the Zealor Serrator to have that 4-up rally, keeping them at the back of your army, kind of like at the back of the cauldron area, because then you've got the 2 screen units there with the bucklers to be your screens. You've got the avatar as well to be like linchpins as well, or be a front line for yourself, and then having it waiting until you've got that good turn to get that run and charge in with the Mind Razor, with the Gladiatrix set up. It's worth holding off on because the impact it can have on a game. I remember doing it into ogres at one point where you get that full buff into the ogre line and you can just take off all of them pretty much. Yeah, you're going to have stuff hitting back to you, but by that point they've had such a hit to them, it's quite bad for them. And especially with the Heart of Fury, you're then -1 to their damage as well, as long as you can keep your bubbles up. Is great. So you've got your attacking power, you've got some tanking units in there, you've got units that you can get back, you've got your screens. As I said, being able to heal the avatars with Crimson Rejuvenation is great. This list I took the Warlord just to give me the double prayer, because if the Crone gets to have the prayers or not, a lot of it's going to depend on that, if I take Warlord or not. So yeah, and then for battle tactics, again, you've got a lot of units for getting your free units charging. I've got a lot of survivability. I've got my Shadow Stalkers, the Shadeborn, to be able to get those kind of 2 or 3 easy battle tactics they can do by themselves. I also get a lot of spread play as well. So a lot of armies I go across are like 1 to 4 drops. So you can just start off by dropping down your Shadeborn or your kind of your screens, or even just an avatar or 2 in the middle. And then I get to actually see where they're deploying the whole army, and then I can play, in a way against that if I want to.
Yeah, I found that really valuable when I was running the Khainite Shadow Stalkers, because I could set them up as a screen, and if I was given first, cool, no problem. I can go and teleport them as well, or I move them around. And even if that unit has 1 or 2 models left, being able to teleport around is still incredibly valuable. So
the fact it's a retreat teleport as well, because a lot of teleports don't let you do it in combat. But Shadow Stalkers and Shadeborn, it says as part of their rule, they can do it as a retreat move. Would
you ever add a unit of Shadow Stalkers to this list and have 3 teleporty units?
Yeah, I mean, I did think about it, but the only issue is what do you drop to add that? Because I need my free battle line, so I'd have to probably drop an avatar.
That's what I was going to say. Like, let's assume because you are, how much is a unit? What's a Shadow Stalker now?
I think they're
140. 140. So you could exactly swap out an avatar, and the points difference would get you to 2K. You'd lose the Triumph, but I mean, 190. You don't have a lot of chance to get it anyway. What does it
necessarily? I think if Shadow Stalker still had that -1 to hitting combat, I think I would take them. Because -1 to hitting combat is great on an army that doesn't have much minuses, especially with the Croneseers prayer, being able to get -1 and then -1 again. They could be a good little roadblock. Because I can already do Surround and Destroy with the Shadeborn, because they're 2 separate units for the hero and the unit, and keeping 10 Witch Elves or an Avatar because they're movement 9, or the Medusa at the backboard. So then, because most of the time she's probably getting on the back to give me the option of Magical Dom or the teleport ability, Surround and Destroy, because I still have a Gladiatrix up front and the Cauldron, which can give me 2 dispels. Yeah.
It was only a thought exercise. It was purely like, obviously, if you're playing Calibron, they become battle line, which makes it an easier decision, but it changes the overall structure of the army. It's just like, okay, well, I mean, if 2 teleporting units is good, is 3 great?
Oh yeah, like if I could have, them as battle line in this, I would totally look at swapping out those 2 units of 10 witch elves for them. Because again, like Shadowstalkers, their power is the hero, the champion. Because that champion can do a lot of damage with the free attacks. Is it at D3 wounds?
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a good hero, and that's probably why. Like, I haven't really looked into the unit, but when I look at the Shadestalker hero and the killing power that it's got, or being able to maybe even the psychological threat of being able to take out that spellcasting savant, or being able to like get into the Blizzard Wizard. We don't have a lot of ways to get into a backfield. And this is a great way because, like, your Khaine not going to do much. Your Shadowstalkers aren't going to do much.
Yeah.
But that is a psychological threat. Will even change the way your opponent plays, let alone, because I don't play with Mirror Dance very often, just because my army's not built the way to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But that gives me a good little threat piece.
Even just the fear of, if you, at the start of the turn, you put the heroic action on her, and then they've got that worry of, oh God, like, what's he doing with this, like, 5 attack now hero with, potentially 2s to hit, 2s to ruin, 1/1 free damage. Like, that can mess up a lot of wizards, especially since you have that heroic action, the command ability that can make 6s explode. So again, only 5 dies, but it's free damage. It can be good value of money.
Put it this way, Dale, in the most complimentary way I can put this, the minute I get off this chat, I am going to be having a look to find if my local store has the Shadestalker, because I am seeing a lot of value, and I think you make a really good argument. And I think one thing I'm really enjoying about this chat as well is because I didn't really play into the Avatar place, because I was putting a lot of my points into support heroes, witch elves, Sisters of Slaughter, and I was playing that defensive play with the Sisters of Slaughter, or just doubling down on the offense between bow snakes, Morathi, witch elves, and playing the attrition game that my units of 20 and 30 witch elves I know would die. But as long as I could get like 15 to 20 of them between rally and, the defensive buffs, I'd be able to do what I want to do. Hearing what you've talked about with the avatars, and I know Jack Armstrong has done well with them, you've done well with them. There's a couple of other been playing with avatars. I just hate the pose. I just hate the model. And I really wish that the 40k avatar was the same size and the same model, because that's always been like one of the things I'm like, I need to find a model that replicates my avatar. But I hear the argument, and the points have gone down enough. I think it was it like 170 or 180?
150 before, and then they went down to 130.
I'm pretty sure it was higher. I feel like it was higher at one point, and then it went down to 150. Then it went down. Yeah. It's at a really good points discount. That I see your argument. It's tanky.
The list kind of became a thing from the Incarnate, because the Incarnate was so prevalent for so long. Having avatars that were immune to its monstrous actions could still do a monstrous action, could tank up to his, because they're 4 at base, 3 up with a cauldron, 2 up standing in a wood, 1 up with Mystic Shield, 0 with all out defense. So against the Cronspine, you could just tank. Another funny one is Arca, sorry, the big Chaos guy and the dragon, because the number of times I've played him and just got him to charge into 1 or 2 avatars together, thinking, oh, I'm going to go in there and destroy them. But then with the -1 damage, they're not heroes, so they can't be heroically killed with his sword. I can heal them with prayers. It means I have 260 points of avatars holding up an 800-odd point model, which means the rest of my army can then just kill his army. And then we deal with him at the end, because by the time he's realized they're in a trap, or even with monsters, by the time they've realized that, oh God, I've just wasted 2 turns trying to kill these 130-point avatars and they're not dying, they've already had that impact on their army.
Yeah, the points discount, the points of the avatars and what they do with the 9 wounds, the 5 up ward, the killy power, and the fact that obviously between books there was that stupid rule where avatars had to be activated, and like the minute they got rid of that dumb rule, that's where it was a real conversation.
I think the big reason you don't see them as often is because you need a Cauldron and the Heart of Fury to make them valuable, because the -1 damage, the +1 armor save, because they've got that base 4-up, 5-up, being able to have that 3-up, 5-up with -1 damage for a very small amount is pretty cool. And most of the time, again, 90% of Daughters of Khaine lists you see is usually Morathi, 15 Bow Snakes, and then whatever else to fill up the points. So they don't usually have the Priest, they don't have the Cauldron, because it's just too much to fit in. Which is why I think it's gone under the radar, because I know a lot of Destruction players and friends of mine from my gaming club that hate the Heart of Fury, because unless you've got a Priest, you can't do anything about it unless it pops. And even if you got a Priest, it's still a 4 for them to dispel it.
Yeah, it is tough. And do you want to sacrifice a chant in order to get rid of it? So the answer is normally no. Like, people usually have pre-allocated what I'm going to do with my prayers, and I can't afford to lose one prayer, because you're right.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of double priest. It's not like I can stand on mystical and get an extra prayer chant. No,
and against Khorne, it's not really that good anyway, because a lot of that stuff is damage 1 anyway. So apart from the big things, it doesn't do much.
Yeah. But maybe the last question I've got for you, this has been great. It's been, hopefully people have gotten a good feel of not only where Daughters of Khaine are at and what the Battlescroll has done for us, but also, the new Army of Renown, the new Croneseer, and, where they might go. And you might not agree that, all 4 avatars is needed, and maybe you just want to have 1 or 2. Obviously, there's, and we all have different opinions on lists, but hopefully Dale, and, we did a previous chat with Ollie a few months ago where, take all of these and formulate your own list in your own play style to whatever suits you. I know I'll be taking some nuggets from Dale. I'm not going to run your list, but there's stuff that you say. There's all right, I'm going to try this out and see where it all goes. But maybe the last question I've got for you is, do you have any other advice to maybe get the most out of Daughters? And maybe I'll put a caveat here to say, one of the biggest challenges with Daughters is finding the moment to pull the trigger. I can blood rights my people up using the sippy cup and spells and abilities and get them into combat in turn 1. But is at the right time? And sometimes we hold back and maybe we don't pull the trigger, and we should have. How do you find the right balance of launching that all-out attack and, again, I don't want to say pull the trigger. I probably shouldn't. Release the bowstring. Release the bowstring.
A lot of times, it's kind of a funny one, because Daughters of Khaine feel like an army you want to get stuck in very quickly, but then you're not getting the bonus of your army because your blood rights aren't in effect. So when I'm playing Hagg Nar, I'm usually wanting to get in turn 2 or 3, depending on what I'm against. Because we have tactics which we can score without engaging, which are pretty reliable. I means I can try and play a bit more defensively. So a lot of time when I'm giving turn 1, I will move. I'll either, as I said, do Shrine to Destroy or Magical Dominance. But then I'll just move up some Witch Elves to put 1 toe on the point. I won't, and I'll keep in that bubble. I'll make sure I've got my avatars. Even put an avatar on a point, as long as they're within 12 inches of the heart. Try and get that out. As long as they're within the Cauldron range. I try and keep everything together, because I kind of want my opponent to come into me, so then I can do the damage to them. They're not getting their effective damage because of the -1 bubble. And then I can kind of grind them in or kind of surround around them. I can still score my tactics while half my army's engaged. If my Shadow Stalkers aren't in combat, they can score, as I said, 2 to 3 tactics by themselves. Or even being able to charge 3 units. There's a lot of Daughters of Khaine ones you can do. It's the same with kind of the Morathi list, where you kind of want to get Morathi in early while shooting stuff with the bow snakes effectively. But again, if you lose her too quickly, if you put her into those wrong combats, I've played against 7 Daughters of Khaine armies with Morathi, and I've won every game because they get Morathi in usually their turn 1, and I've managed to do the 3 wounds to it. And then all I got to do is just concentrate on doing 3 wounds a turn, ignore the rest, and she's dead by the bottom of turn 2.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake on their part, where I didn't have any range threat over 10 inches. So if they would hold her back and take more advantage of that shooting or something like that to target down my things, they would do a lot better. But yeah, I find the biggest mistake of Daughters players is trying to get in too early, where we have great tactics, we have the blood right table. The longer we're in the game, the better we get.
Yeah, there's been plenty of times where even like I go top of turn 1, I get some prayers and spells off, and I don't move.
Yeah.
Or the movement is absolutely basic. I keep the same structure, but I just edge it forward slightly because I don't want to be charged. Now, the avatars do bring a different element to that, but a lot of my things don't want to be charged, and I don't want to make it easier for you to charge. I have the run and charge abilities. I have the +1 to run. I have +1 to charge. So I know that I can throw myself out pretty quickly, but I need to be very careful and mindful. So and sometimes, like I said, I've literally not moved. I've gone, no, cool,
Yeah.
happy with my setup. Cast spells and prayers, abilities. Over to you.
If you think about Khorne, turn 1, if you're not getting close to them, they haven't really got a tactic. There's a lot of armies where they want to get stuck in quite quickly because after turn 3, they've run out of tactics. Like Ironjaws is the big one, where they really struggle after maybe 3 turns. Ogres, even. They maybe have like 3 turns of good tactics, and then after that, it depends on the game. So in a situation where we can be avoidant, still score tactics, and then be more powerful as the game goes on, we're now at a point where we've got easy tactics and our army's better, and they're struggling for what they can do because we've just not chucked ourselves in.
Yeah, and the longer our game plays, the more powerful we become with the blood rights table. So I think the incentives are there to hold back a little bit. But just as you've said, thinking about how you score your battle tactics and your sequence order in order to still have the combat-y ones, but like what can you do? Magical Dom, Surround and Destroy, for example, or something in your battle tome that will allow you to do it later.
Yeah.
Look, this has been awesome.
Fun.
Yeah. Oh, they're a great army, and I think I really want to see more Daughters on the table.
One of the things I'll briefly touch on earlier on, because we forgot to talk about it, was there was some changes of points to endless spells. Now, most of the time with Daughters of Khaine, I don't bother with endless spells, even if I have a spare 20, 30 points. The issue I have with Daughters of Khaine having endless spells is our wizards are very easy to kill. So essentially, you're kind of giving your opponents a tactic by having an endless spell on the table. So I tend to, as a Daughters of Khaine player, not have any endless spells just because I don't want to give them that option. With my 2 wizards I have on the field, where one of them I'm wanting to get Mind Razor off anyway. And to be honest, I'd rather have a Mystic Shield on my Cauldron or an Avatar than have something that could give my opponent potentially an easy tactic.
Yeah. I have played around a lot with the Bloodrack Viper, and I've really enjoyed it. But it has to come with Morathi because at least I know I've got Morathi for... Look, I've normally got Morathi till turn 3. Like, I don't think I've ever lost her by the bottom of turn 2. Usually turn 3, creeping into turn 4. So having the Bloodrack Viper out has been very valuable to me, especially being able to eat, super stacked up particular models. But I see the argument. I absolutely see the argument, and I don't think you need many endless spells. If any, I'd rather the Triumph for +1 to wound or a reroll charge than, as you've said, an endless spell. I'd rather go 1930, 1940 than fill up just for the sake of having an endless spell.
Even a lot of the time denying your opponent the Triumph as well.
I can't stress enough how valuable that is. There's so many armies that want the immune to battle shock or being able to re-roll the charge. Like that is critical. So yeah, I wholly agree. Dale, anything else or you want to wrap up with?
No, just thank you for having me on, and keep the show going. People love it.
I appreciate it. I was going to end it after this video, but I guess your kind words have inspired me to continue going. But
and come back to LVO next year.
Well, it'll be year 3, right? Like I'm currently in the LVO or Adepticon, so let's see. Let's see. But right now, Vegas, it's so hard to not go to Vegas. Any shout outs? Any people you wanna recommend, or if people want to chat to you, or where can they find you, or are you going to be at any events, or like?
Well, so
tell me more about the Dale story.
So I'm on Twitter at Chumphammer. It's the name of my old Warhammer podcast that I still have on Twitter for some reason. I'm going to Sparkle Party Deathmatch and West Coast GT in March, and then probably Tacoma, the Tacoma Open run by Chuck and all those guys. Shout outs probably to Dudes of Sigma. They're a Prince George AOS podcast. Saga of Dice, which is a Vancouver one. I think Rob's been on your show before.
Yeah.
I
had Roma from Dudes come over to chat about dragons.
Yeah, she had a great time at Cake. She went 3 wins and a minor win, and got top in her bracket. So she's doing well with Stormcast. And yeah, just my local club, Warp Dice. We're doing pretty well. We've got Matthias, who's been on the show. We've got Carson, who's been on the show. So we've got some decent players out there now. So we're getting those numbers up on ITC.
Well, and we've officially completed the triangle.
The triangle,
I've now officially had all 3 of you on there. Yeah. So keep up
the
great
funny triangle.
It's so funny like that. It's so funny how we all have the wood on each other, and that's great. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. I can't say anything more about that. But you have been an absolute gem. I hope, folks, that you have enjoyed our discussion about not only Daughters of Khaine, but the new Crone, the new Armies of Renown. If you're thinking about picking it up, and she is an awesome model. I can't stress enough. GamesWorks did send it to me, but I've had an absolute ball painting her. And it's one of the reasons now I'm reconsidering, now that I've come off Gargants, what should I do? Should I do cities? Should I do Daughters? Dale, you may have swung this in the favor of Daughters, and I may be getting offline, going to see if I can buy that. Not only that model, but my problem as well is, you may or may not know this, is my Daughters of Khaine is a Slaanesh inspired Daughters of Khaine. So there was a story from Fantasy Battles, you may recall it, the Storm of Chaos, where Morathi and Slaanesh had a pact. Yes, it's not AOS friendly. Yes, Slaanesh hates Morathi. Yes, go away. And it is a cult of Slaanesh. So all of my Daughters of Khaine, even my Morathi, has, instead of having the the spear, I have a big Slaanesh claw from the Keeper of Secrets. Yeah. And I've my cauldron is Glutos's cauldron, and I've got the old Dark Eldar slave models that are less slavey. I've even put like Witch of Crowns on them, and I've gone all hard on like
that's pretty Slaanesh cool. Yeah,
I've got a corrupted Slaanesh cult, like it's a little side business from Morathi, but I need to work out what I do with the cauldron. And so not cauldron, so the avatars, and what could be my avatar of Khaine's.
Well, I mean, the fun thing about the avatars is they are only a 40mm base, even though they're a 9-wound behemoth. So, technically, and the avatars from the cauldron aren't that big. So you can, maybe there's some fun. What about using painting up who's that? Sigvald. Make him into an avatar.
I was thinking like potentially, because I need 4 of them or 3 of them if I was inspired by you. I was thinking maybe like fiends. Like if I get 4 fiends and I get them standing up, if I reposition them standing up, could that be my avatar? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section what you think. But I think maybe that might be, because it's right, the size as well. It's such a small base.
Yeah.
I'm getting inspired by Daughters.
Do it.
If that inspired you folks, I don't know what is. But Dale, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. Go follow Dale on X/Twitter. You are in my Discord as well. Feel free to chat along with Dale, and I can't wait to see what people do and what inspiration the Crone and that brings to your lists. But thanks everyone. Enjoy and leave comments. And like I said, you can support the channel through Element, Gap, or Warp Supply Minis. Link is below. All right. Bye. I'm going now. Bye. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AOS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1-1 on a spellcast.